to the conference. You are one of our international partners, and as always, we appreciate your presence here. And I've introduced your title for today's conference, and I want to allow you to say a few minutes about yourself, and then you may go ahead and start your presentation. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Great, great. So, Dr. Amina Sigwatala, I welcome you to introduce yourself and your presentation. Thank you.
All right. So myself, Dr. Amina, and currently I'm associated with the Karachi Institute of Engineering and Economics and Technology University. And I am heading Department of Management Sciences there. And I'm also assistant professor. So today I would like to present on, right. So shall I start with my presentation?
Yes, you may start. You may share your screen if you
Right,
need to.
okay, thank you. Okay. So today I'll be going to present on imbuing the future of black barriers, the right choice. That means investing in the, like as the theme is also referring to investment in the future. That means the most important part of our future is usually the youth segment of our population. So what we actually see that today's youth are the future, and for that reason, investing in the next generation is crucial to sustainable and equitable growth. Of course, if we want our economy to sustain and if we want our economy to grow or having the good standard of living, definitely we are investing in the human capital. Human capital basically refers to the skills, knowledge, and abilities of the workers. And what we actually see that our future generation is quite productive. They are very energetic. So investing in them is definitely in the upcoming future, in the upcoming years, we are going to see the fruitful results. Then research also shows that boosting investments in children and youth from cradle to career may be the most effective path to improving stagnant social mobility rates in the US. And the American dream is built on the promise of upward social mobility. And further, what we see that making a greater and more effective investment in children and youth will be the best way to improve social mobility throughout the nation. So what will be the strategies in that case? What as an investor we can implement the strategies for this purpose? So the first approach is to, you can say, or one approach to investing in the next generation is a bottom-up strategy. And what we actually see that according to the Brookings, the US government and other state governments have not enacted policies needed to improve youth well-being, either because they are paralyzed by the partisanship or because they are ideologically opposed to such actions. So here what we are basically talking or referring to that the government should also be investing in or they should plan the strategies in such a way, they should formulate and implement the strategies in such a way that should be enacted or they are aligned with the investment in the human capital. And further, many communities are also teaming up with businesses, non-profit organizations and other groups to support the youth initiatives, because what we actually see that now in business schools as well, we are coming up with incubation centers. We are developing this incubation center that is solely for this purpose that the graduates, they are coming up with the new projects. Of course, this is all about an idea, a project that will tomorrow will be a business in the economy. And further, then they will going to create certain other employment opportunities for the next generation. So what challenges do we have to face in that case and how we will going to combat with those challenges? So first is about like globally, young people face many challenges, like from high unemployment to low high school graduation rates in some countries. And to address these issues, the government, the private sector, and investors in multiple countries are investing in youth in novel ways. And in the era of job creation, for example, like Agreement Impact Investments India and Acumen recently announced the Life SDG bond, India's first sustainable development goal bond for profit social enterprises. So what it is about that it will train up to 20,000 young people for employment with the goal of attracting private investors who will adopt an impact-based assessment model. Now, this is what is actually happening that I was referring to, that in our incubation center, we usually invite the various investors and we present the projects of the graduates to those investors. And the main purpose is just to start with to let the graduates to start with their own businesses so that they could run their own businesses. Definitely, it will going to have a huge impact on the overall society collectively if we talk about. Then investing in youth poses challenges for investors as some initiatives in developing countries may be considered high risk and areas such as education may require buy-in from a circuit of decision makers. And yet there are signs of promise. By the end of the year, time educate girls had exceeded its enrollment target. Now, what if we look back into the SDGs, that is the Sustainable Development Goals. So in one of the SDGs also about the quality education. So when we are talking about the education, definitely we come across the literacy rate and the illiteracy rate that we usually we see in illiteracy rate is slightly higher in the developing countries. So developing nations. So in those nations, such kind of you can say mindset or culture should prevail. Like come up, or I can say in brief, the entrepreneurial mindset should be inculcated in the youth. Because basically the developing nations, they're you can say they are more tuning up, or they are more setting their mindset of a student towards the job, towards the hunting of a job right after the completion of the degrees. Though the entrepreneurial mindset or the entrepreneurial spirit should be inculcated in their minds. And for that, we should be having certain kind of organizations, because once the students are completing their degrees, and if we are asking them to start with their own, to come up with their own ventures, to come up with their own startups. So the first question is that how we will going to acquire the capital. Now, definitely the government should be planning, the government of that nation should be planning, or you can say providing them with certain kind of agencies or certain kind of enterprises, those who will going to facilitate them in one or the other way, so that they could at least initiate their businesses. Further, what we see that the time to act is now. The question is, who will lead the effort to expand those proven strategies? Over the past decade, it has become apparent that we cannot rely upon the federal government or the states. And the demographic realities are driving up spending on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And local leaders have recognized that the issue of stagnant opportunities is far too urgent to wait for other levels of the government to act. And in communities across the country, leaders in local governments have joined forces with non-profit philanthropies and businesses to increase the magnitude, quality, and coordination of cradle to career investment in the next generation. So what we are actually looking into this thing that this is also actually showing the importance of investing in the next generation. We as a society should be aware of the demographic realities. Likewise, what kind of education we are providing to them, what is their highest level of qualification, what is their income level, and definitely if we refer to the developing states, the developing nations, there we have this issue of poverty as well. And even the low income class, if we refers to the individuals, those who are actually falling into that quartile, they are hardly they are actually meeting their ends meet. So the government is also trying to come up with certain kind of projects, and then they are also involving the various investors across the society to collaborate and to come up with the projects, so that and then this is also getting inculcated in the business schools to provide the youth with this mindset that you have to come up with your own business, come up with your own startup. Then communities are therefore expanding programs that stretch well beyond the traditional set of public services provided to youth, and they are investing in efforts like nurse visiting programs, early childhood education, supplemental academic and social curricula, after school programs, summer learning initiatives, and they are tailoring interventions to align with their specific needs, coordinating across sectors and silos, and most importantly, drawing upon new sources of revenue to finance those efforts. The government, the federal government, or the government at the state level, we can say, that they are coming or they are implementing such kind of, they are devising the policies that how we will going to, you can say, fund the projects, so that, and then we are also trying to invest in the human capital. Likewise, we try to invest more in their education, or you can say we try to refine their skills. Even what we are actually looking nowadays, that corporations that are also looking for the candidates, or in short, I can say the concept of intrapreneur. It starts with intrapreneur, that they are actually within their organization, they want somebody to come up with some innovative idea. And usually such kind of mindset is more expected from the young employees in the organizations as well, in the corporations as well. Because what we expect, that they are quite energetic, enthusiastic, full of life. So the corporations also, you can say, and they are looking forward for the innovative ideas, so that they could invest it and then they come up with a new idea within their businesses. So ultimately what we see, that if we just simply invest in the youth, of course, we will going to reap several benefits in the future as well. And they will, and those benefits will be, you can say, will be for the overall, for the welfare of the overall society. So, and this was my short, you can say, piece of research that I would like to present.
Thank you. That was wonderful. If there are any questions for Dr. Amina, please either raise your hand or put your question in the chat box so that we can get the ball rolling. I do have one quick question for you, Dr. Amina, and that is, how are young people reacting to the various initiatives that you spoke about in your presentation?
Values and initiatives.
Yes.
It is all about that. It starts basically from like if just for example, okay. Of course, they have an affirmative attitude. They have the positive attitude towards these kind of initiatives. Because yesterday I was conducting a workshop on innovation and entrepreneurship in some other university. I was a speaker there. So I was actually what I was actually observing in the audience, that they have that spirit. They just need the right direction where they could invest their time, energy, and cost. So that they could initiate with their own ventures. Because nowadays what we found, that this culture of just being the job oriented is slowly getting discarded because of this new revolution of to come up with your own venture, or to come up with your own startups.
Right.
Because in this case, you are in another way, you are giving or you are opening the various horizons, or you are coming up with more employment opportunity for the other generation as well.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. So our next panel is Dr. Flateau, Professor Allen, and Mr. Ebby. Is he here?
We're going to proceed. Kenneth Ebby, are you on?
I'm on.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, we're ready to roll.
All right. Good to see
Get
everyone.
started. Welcome to this session on working capital and investment capital for Black-owned business enterprises. And welcome on behalf of the Department of Business Administration, our School of Business, our students, faculty, staff, and alumni. The backdrop to this panel is the pandemic. Its devastating economic and business impacts, and the fact that we are now moving into recovery mode. And I want to commend our previous presenter, Dr. Amina, from halfway around the world. The prescriptions that she laid out, I was smiling as she presented, are almost exactly the same type of strategies and prescriptions that we should be utilizing here in the US and right here in Brooklyn, in the heart of Brooklyn. As we know, Brooklyn was the epicenter, is the epicenter of the pandemic. A few blocks from our campus is Downstate Medical Center. And I was on another presentation given by the Urban League, where he mentioned the two highest zip codes negatively impacted by the pandemic, 11203 and 11226. Well, that's Medgar College. Those are the highest recruitment zip codes for our students. So it has impacted our student enrollment, it has impacted our retention, and it has impacted all the small businesses in the neighborhood surrounding Medgar College. So we have with us today two experts who are going to lay out some of the solutions to this tremendous challenge of recovering our small businesses, our Black-owned businesses right here in Brooklyn, and moving to the future. Professor LaShawn Alexander, in addition to being our professor in public administration, is actually a woman entrepreneur providing high-level business services to small businesses and nonprofits right here in this community and beyond. And Kenneth Ebby, and she represents a national model. The solution to this challenge are right in our midst. The very businesses that have been harmed should be at the front of the line as all these resources are flowing online in delivering services to our small businesses, Black-owned businesses. And Kenneth Ebby is heading up a unique initiative coming out of our New York City Department of Business Services, which should be a national model. He is charged by his commissioner, Janelle Doris, with specifically focusing on the revitalization of Black-owned businesses. He has an initiative called Black Entrepreneurs NYC. So let's hear from first professor and woman entrepreneur, LaShawn Alexander, followed by Kenneth Ebby, the Chief Development Officer of Black Entrepreneurship NYC. Professor Alexander, share screen.
Hi, good morning. Good morning. I'm so happy to be here today. And so let me just share my screen with you all. All right, so thank you for that lovely introduction, Dr. Flateau. My name is Professor LaShawn Alexander, and I am a consultant, a business consultant. And so, you know, as a result of COVID, we realized that there were so many challenges for our small businesses. You know, from the jump, the PPP program that was available for relief, big businesses were the ones that really sort of took up the bigger share of the pie. And so, you know, I just want to say thank you for good leadership. And so this provisions for the American Rescue Plan was created Wednesday, March 10th. So this conference is just on point with timing. because, you know, our federal government has thought about the small businesses such as my company in mind. And so today I just want to touch on some of the provisions that are in this rescue plan to support small businesses. The rescue plan involves other aspects, but I'm going to be specific to the small businesses today. All right, so the bill provision, includes $1.9 trillion, right? And that's a lot. And over 50 billion of that funding is going to support independent small businesses. And so entrepreneurs for both blue states and red states were involved in the planning process, right? So Main Street organizations such as restaurants will benefit from this rollout and this package. Black, Latino, rustic, and different networks have felt the most noticeable, awful economic impacts of the pandemic. So as Dr. Flateau said, with the numbers and the zip codes, our communities were the most affected. And so 34% of Black communities are seeing a 41% decrease, right? That's alarming, right? Those numbers are really tragic. And, it's important for small businesses such as mine to continue to thrive, right, during this climate. And so this funding that's available is something that, we're really expecting to not bail us out, but to allow us to continue to do the great work and the great service that we provide to our communities. And so the PPP 60 billion is going to be going to local area banks, community development, financial institutions, and minority depository institutions. And this was not the case for, the first rollout, where most of the funding went to big banks, because they had the ability to process all of those, loans and payments. And so thankfully, our leadership at the federal level is thinking about us. The rescue plan also provides an additional $7.25 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program. It expands eligibility for nonprofits. And we know that nonprofits also were hardest hit by COVID-19. It adds $15 billion for targeted economic injury disaster loans. And those are forgivable loans. So, as a small business, when you get a loan, the interest rates may be low, but it's always good to have a opportunity to have a forgivable loan. And so, at least our leadership is thinking about this in a more positive way to support, the hardest hit businesses. It's establishing a $2.8 billion restaurant revitalization fund, which provides grants to help local restaurants and to help us keep our doors open. And it's establishing community navigator pilot programs. And we all know firsthand that most of the times it's the pilot programs that help, find the gaps in terms of resources and building, in our community. So at least we know that they're thinking about this strategically as a government to support our local businesses. And then it's going to provide $10 billion in state small business credit initiatives to create jobs. Now, the American Rescue Plan Act, some of the information that I'm sharing came from our New York City Small Business Services. And again, I will share my presentation with everybody in the chat, so you have this details to reference later. But it's looking at state and local fiscal aid. So not just on the federal level, but it trickles down to the state level to support small businesses with the employee retention tax credit. So you can keep your employees on payroll. There's certain SBA programs that will, receive some types of tax incentives. Again, the EIDL grants will be available, restaurants, shuttered avenue operators and grant programs. And then they've expanded the PPP eligibility, right? So a lot of the smaller businesses, you know, weren't able to provide a lot of the, you know, detailed budgets and spreadsheets and, you know, the things that are required to receive loans. And so I'm sure with this expanded PPP eligibility program that some of those small businesses will be, you know, able to receive revenue so that they can continue to support their communities and do the great work that they're doing. I'm going to share with you these links, but just quick. I'll share with those links after, but just a final thought here for my company, at LaShance Consulting. We anticipate that the American Rescue Plan will greatly affect the future of small businesses. This $50 billion in recovery will definitely stimulate our economy, because in order for our economy to be stimulated, we need money, right? We need funding to be coming into small businesses so that they can, in the end, hire more employees. They can produce more, you know, products and services. So our thoughts is that with this recovery plan that, you know, we're going to have, you know, we're very optimistic that this will support us and trickle down to small companies, minority-owned businesses such as ours. I'd like to acknowledge our president for this act, the U.S. Small Business Administration, the commissioner, John Doris, and his team, our School of Business leader extraordinaire, Dean Joanne Rowe, for her leadership, and Raquel and all the team that works along with her, Professor Dr. Flateau for his leadership in the School of Business. I'd like to thank my own chairperson, Dr. Zulima Blair, as part of the public administration team here at the college. And yeah, so anyone have any questions, any comments? Now would be the time.
After, let's get to Ken, and then we'll open it up for Q&A.
Okay, and so you'll have the links in the chat, okay?
So let's thank our woman entrepreneur, Professor LaShance Alexander, for that very informative presentation. And now on to our next presenter. He's from an agency that will be a key conduit for those tens, hundreds of millions of dollars that is going to be infused in the New York City economy to help our Black-owned businesses, our small businesses. So without further ado, the Executive Director and Chief Development Officer of Black Entrepreneurs NYC, Kenneth Ebby.
Thank you so much, Dr. Flateau, and good morning, everyone. It's really an honor to join you virtually today at the Medgar College School of Business Investment Conference, and to join this panel with Professor Alexander, another individual who represents the many influential leaders in our community. So I just want to thank Dr. Dean, Dr. Janet Roll, and Dr. Flateau, who I've known and respected for many years since I've been here in Brooklyn, and actually met for the first time when I was the campaign manager for the first Black Brooklyn District Attorney, the late, great Ken Thompson. So it's really an honor to be here and to be with you today, Dr. Flateau, and all of you here. So business ownership and entrepreneurship are the most viable and sustainable ways to close the racial wealth gap. That is our thesis. And I know, just as Professor Alexander, quite personally, because I'm a business owner of my own boutique social impact and public affairs firm, EB Strategies. Yet we see stark disparities when we look at the entrepreneurship landscape. And I just wanted to touch on some of the numbers, and I'll try to be concise, but I want to run through the numbers that really form the foundation of why we're doing what we're doing at BNYC. We issued a landmark report in August 2020 called Advancing Black Entrepreneurship in New York City that revealed that while Black New Yorkers make up 22% of the population, we are only 3.5% of the business owners in this city. We've seen a Citigroup report that revealed that systemic racism against Black Americans has cost the United States approximately $16 trillion. Black workers have lost $113 billion in potential wages over the past 2 decades, and about $13 trillion in business revenue never flowed into the economy because Black entrepreneurs, business owners could not access bank loans. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention very specifically that during this Women's History Month, we've also seen how the pandemic and other systemic challenges have disproportionately affected Black women founders, Black women business owners, while dealing with the lack of capital and other business resources. So according to a city racial equity report, we did see that Black businesses received just 1% of venture capital dollars when we look at the tech-inspired companies and startups. But even in that amount, only 0.02% of venture capital dollars went to Black women. So this is a major, major challenge and a major problem that we need to fix. What we all know as well in this current climate is that the pandemic, which was a health crisis, ultimately triggered an economic crisis, which has further highlighted some of these systemic issues that are contributing to inequalities in business ownership and the all too well-known racial wealth gap. Black business is an essential part of New York City, and we've seen that impact to be significantly more on Black businesses here. We're more than twice as likely to close than our white counterparts. And to Professor Alexander's point, we've seen to this point disparate resource allocation, particularly access to capital. So prior to this previous round, and obviously the stats will be followed and documented, and hopefully we will see an improvement. But in the federal PPP program, Black business owners received only 12% of what we asked for. Again, Black women-owned firms have taken the brunt of that disparity, while they represent the highest growth rate of any female demographic business owners. They've been systematically locked out of equitable funding opportunities that will allow businesses to reach maturity and sustainability. So these are some of the numbers that influence the work that we're doing. I can say just on a brighter note that despite these alarming stats, we know that there's tremendous potential for Black businesses here in New York City and across the country. Black-owned firms here in the city are growing 4 times faster than white-owned firms. And Black women are the fastest growing demographic of entrepreneurs throughout the whole country. So there's a very clear disconnect between the ability, between the presence, and the access to the resources. So that only increases the urgency of the work we're doing at BNYC at this time. So what is BNYC? Black Entrepreneurs NYC is the first of its kind initiative in a major American city that is focused explicitly on helping to address the racial wealth gap by empowering Black entrepreneurs to launch and sustain their businesses, particularly businesses centered in the economy of tomorrow. So the resources that we are in the process of developing and the programs that we are developing are aiming to address four pathways that we believe to address some of these systemic obstacles And those four are first, aiming to provide equitable access to capital, to financing. Second, helping to strengthen connections within New York City's Black entrepreneurial community, and that is connections between peers and what I refer to as the kind of the horizontal networking, peer-to-peer, and also we look to build out the vertical networking, access to mentorship, professional services, technical services that will enable a business to survive and thrive. But that connectivity is key, and that's something that we have not had access to. The third piece is that we want to help scale Black businesses for long-term success, and we are looking to do so through connecting Black businesses with contracting opportunities through the city procurement process, providing information and access to how to get contracts with the city, how to certify as an MWBE in order to get into that pipeline, and then also some capacity building opportunities to help Black-owned businesses be prepared when they get those opportunities. We're also looking at how to leverage relationships with other large players in New York City, such as the universities, the cultural institutions, the organizations, the corporate organizations that are headquartered here in New York City that have significant supply chains and contracting opportunities. And the last piece, the fourth, is we are really looking at helping to position aspiring Black entrepreneurs and current Black business owners who are looking to pivot and to adapt to the economy of tomorrow, to get the opportunities and to have the presence squarely in the center of these high growth, high priority industries here in New York City. And we're looking at the healthcare industry, healthcare tech in particular. We're looking at education tech. We're looking at green infrastructure. And we're also taking a very serious look at the cannabis industry, particularly given the opportunity that exists there to do some true restorative work, true economic justice, and provide opportunities to our communities that have been ravaged by disparate and unequal treatment in the criminal justice system. So the BNYC initiative is focused on those four particular pathways, and it's an example of a sustained commitment that recognizes the importance of the Black community to New York City's overall economic vitality. There are a number of programs that we are going to be rolling out, but I think before I close and wrap for questions and answers is, I think it's important that, in my vision and leadership of this initiative, I do bring with me a certain set of values that are rooted in and derived from our community, the Black community, the African diaspora. And so in doing this work, we are focused not just on the what, not just on the products and the services that we put out, but we are focused on how we do that work. And a really important mechanism is our leveraging of strategic partnerships. We're focused on establishing and leveraging public-private partnerships to provide the resources and programs that we are delivering for Black entrepreneurs. And so we have 4 inaugural partnerships that are delivering on some of those 4 pillars that I mentioned to you. And I just want to touch on those briefly. They're providing the resources that will sustain what we believe the present and future of Black entrepreneurship to be. We have a key partnership with EY, the professional consulting firm that's providing 2,000 hours of one-on-one consulting services and a curated resource hub and online learning sessions for Black entrepreneurs. Through a partnership with MasterCard, we're engaging in their Digital Doors curriculum. It's a series that's aimed to help entrepreneurs set up virtual storefronts and maximize their online sales. We have a key partnership as well with Goldman Sachs through their 10,000 Small Businesses initiative that will inform Black entrepreneurs through providing affordable financing and also some business education resources. And I'm really excited about a partnership that we have established with the Brooklyn Navy Yard to create a brick and mortar facility, the BNYC Accelerator, which is scheduled right now to break ground in early 2022. But we will have programming prior to that, well prior to that in 2021, that will be focused on helping to cultivate Black-owned businesses, particularly in the tech sector, to be positioned for professional development, for networking, and ultimately for access to the type of capital that is needed to scale their businesses. And so we're very excited about that work. And again, I think that, you know, the great leadership of our commissioner, Janelle Doris, has really focused on 3 particular guiding principles: innovation, adaptability, and collaboration. And we are using those principles to guide our work at BNYC to provide resources to Black business owners who are at the heart of New York City's economic recovery. So I will close there, but I want everyone to know before we get into the question and answer that to learn more about some of our specific programs, I encourage you to go to nyc.gov/BENYC, sign up to join our community, and let us be a part of your dream and your goals. So thank you for having me on this panel this morning. I'm very honored to be here.
Let's thank our expert panelists, and let's move right to Q&A with the few minutes we have remaining. I see a number of hands up. Ms. Bennett, you'll handle the Q&A?
Yes, Ms. Roxanne Towler will handle the Q&A.
Sharifa Clark, one of our own in business administration. I see she has her hand up.
Hi, Dr. Flato. How are you?
Hello there.
My question is, what is being done specifically to assist the student entrepreneur? You know, the sole proprietor who does hair, but did a good amount of hair to sustain her, who's now affected by COVID. What's done? Because I know, I believe the first criteria was you had to have 10 to 15 employees, you know, but what's being done for that entrepreneur? You know, I'm in school, this helps me pay my bills, this helps me get my books, but I was affected, but I don't meet any of the criteria that the SBA has put out for the PPE.
Well, I know for one that they have modified and liberalized the qualifications in this round 2, precisely because so many of our small Black-owned businesses could not access or did not access. There was racial disparity in the distribution of those resources in round 1. I'll let, please jump in, Professor Alexander or Ken, if you have any additional comments.
Yeah, I just echo what Dr. Flato said. I think that because they've realized that the funding for the real organizations that were suffering, it wasn't getting to them, that they've expanded it. So now I think in terms of this round, it's much easier to apply for the PPP, as part of it is incorporating your business, right? So you do want to incorporate your business as an entrepreneur, but at least you can include, it's at least you can walk in the door of a bank knowing that you've done this kind of type of work.
Let me add one other point. Professor Alexander is triple certified.
Yes.
Certified with the City of New York, the State of New York, and the Port Authority as a minority and women business enterprise, which gets her in the door a lot faster in terms of the government contracting opportunities that Ken Ebby was referring to. Let me give you one specific one. Right next door to our Carroll Street building, the School Construction Authority has a $100 million project, and there's no reason why our small Black-owned businesses in the Crown Heights area surrounding that Carroll Street building shouldn't get the lion's share of those contracts. But being certified is a standard that these government agencies look to, and that's another way to position. And if you're certified, it's more likely that you're also going to qualify for the payroll protection program application, et cetera. So I just wanted to throw that in. Next,
Dr. Flateau, if I could add one more thing from the city perspective. I think it's important to take note as well, Sharifa, that the city is very aware of the fact that too many small businesses in the city got left behind in the first round of PPP, particularly minority and women-owned businesses. And so there's a program that was announced last month called Fair Share NYC. I encourage you to look that up. It's providing direct assistance to businesses that are looking for access to PPP loans, and it's offering, through the Department of Small Business Services, led by our Commissioner Janelle Doris. We're offering free resources to help businesses apply for the PPP. So,
okay, thank you.
We have webinars, right, to review PPP and EIDL, advanced programs and how to apply, one-on-one technical assistance, connections to PPP lenders. In fact, the commissioner and I we're scheduling a call with a Black-owned fintech company that is really, positioned well to provide that kind of assistance and capital to Black-owned businesses. And so, even though our agency doesn't have control over the approval of the funds, we're definitely working very hard to help all New York City businesses understand how to apply for them. So you should check out the website, nyc.gov/PPP. Or you can call our hotline at 888-SBS for NYC, 888-SBS the number 4 NYC, and get more information on these free resources.
Mr. Emmy?
Thank you. Professor Z, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, question for Ken Abbey. Really enjoyed everybody's presentation here. Some of your stats were pretty outstanding in the good or in the bad. For those high growth rates among Black businesses, especially Black women businesses, what do you think is behind the growth rates? Part A. Part B, why does capital not want to participate in those growth rates?
Thank you so much for that excellent question. So what's behind those growth rates? I think it's interesting. I can speak anecdotally just from knowing Black women in my family who have been my teachers, who have been in my community, and who have raised me, and who have also who have mentored me in the professional setting. That I don't think you could find more resourceful, harder working, determined, and just brilliant people. Okay, so this is something which I think everybody refers to Black girl magic. It's unfortunately this notion of the strong and the super powers of Black women is a virtue of necessity because of the intersectional fact that they are both Black, so they are subject to racism, institutional racism, and they are women. So they're subject to sexism, and so we, these conditions have forged a very resourceful and resilient group of people. Now, so I think that is behind it. So you look at the numbers, and you look at Dr. Plateau's agreeing. It's just the truth. You look at the numbers of these businesses. And kind of who the founders are, particularly in the tech space. And BNYC, we have a cabinet of established entrepreneurs and business leaders. And one of our cabinet members is a woman named Regina Gwynn, who helped to publish some really interesting and important stats on Black women in the tech space, and to the point of investment. She's the co-founder of a group called Black Women Talk Tech. And her stats show, Black women founders are very highly educated, highest educated out of categories. Over 46% of them have a professional degree. And in the context of COVID, 63% of them saw traction in their businesses 6 months prior to the survey. They're doing well, despite the fact that they're not receiving seed funding. 40% of the respondents in her survey indicated that while they had paying customers and are gaining revenue, they're not getting seed funding. And so to answer your question, why aren't they receiving the due resources? I think that a big part of what we're trying to do with BNYC is we're trying to help change the narrative. I think when you look particularly in the VC space, if you were to go out west or look at some of the startup companies in the tech space that have been most prolific or successful, you see a particular profile. And the reality is that most of the people who are running these multi-million, billion-dollar startups are white men who went to certain universities. And do you know what that tells me? That tells me that there is a networking problem or issue that is preventing those people with the capital from being able to access, or not access, I'd say to reach out to and look at people who look different or went to different schools. And Black women are unfortunately doubly X'd out of that network. And so I think that it really comes down to, creating a narrative that really indicates the reality that, Black women are very, very well prepared and poised due to circumstance to be the best investment you can make as a VC. And so it's changing the narrative in terms of what it means and what a good investment looks like. We're definitely focused like a laser on changing that narrative.
Thank you. It looks like last Andre Brereton.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Kudos to all involved in a great workshop thus far. So my question for Mr. Ebby, specific to the students, like what advice would you give them, that they can do immediately after this call if they're thinking about getting into their own business, if they're aspiring to be an entrepreneur? And also a second question to Dr. Alexander, are there any loopholes with this new, the American Rescue Plan, in which one can perhaps get the seed money to start their own business?
I'll be brief, or actually I can, why don't I just press this mute button here and let Dr. Alexander take.
Thank you. There are always loopholes. And I think in my world, I like to be creative and innovative and just think about how to tell your story in terms of your organization. So you may have started your business, not incorporated it, but you can, use maybe your historical experience to show and demonstrate your, years of experience in terms of that business. So I think it's about creating opportunities through telling your story. So for example, myself, I've been incorporated as LaShawn's Consulting, for 2.5 years, but I've had over 10 years of experience really cultivating the work that I've done, right? So when I'm telling my company story, though I am 2.5 years old, I'm over 10 years of this particular area of service. And that's with most businesses, right? It takes us a long time to finally incorporate, right? So people keep telling us, get your business, start your business, start it, get it incorporated. But you're usually, just doing it without incorporating. And so I think that's how we can tell our story in our years of experience in terms of, going forward. So I would always say, don't think of things as being in a box and cut and dry, but think about how you can really creatively and innovatively use your experience to tell that story.
Thank you. We're at a close of this particular panel. If you did not get your question answered, please place it in the chat box, and all panelists will try to get to it there, or we'll try to get to it at a later date. Up next is a panel that is going to be moderated by Ms. LaShawn Allen Muhammad. LaShawn, I ask you to come up and introduce your panel and your people. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Good morning, Raquel. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. I will actually call my co-panelists. Well, I'm moderating the segment. I will call up Professor Wallace Ford, Nia Rock, and Lorette Farris. If you can all come on camera. And we will be moderating a panel today. So first and foremost, let me introduce myself. My name is LaShawn Allen Muhammad. I'm the Executive Director at Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation. I also serve as the Brooklyn Director of the Long Island African American Chamber of Commerce. And today's panel discussion is centered around the history of Reconstruction. And we'll talk about what we've learned so far and how we'll take those lessons to pave a way forward to ensure that progress achieved in the Black and Brown communities are never disrupted again. And so I'm joined today by my esteemed panelists or co-panelists to have a full discussion about what that means. And the title of, and I'll actually share my screen. Okay, make sure you can all see it. And the title of today's panel discussion is Community Development, Igniting the Third Reconstruction. And for those who may not know or may not be familiar with Reconstruction, that's the time period where we've witnessed and we've experienced Black and Brown progress in our communities. And so the first Reconstruction happened right after the Civil War, right after the abolishment of slavery. There was this 12-year time period where, Black folks became elected officials. You saw Black communities thriving, being independent, being business owners. And after a 12-year period, there was purposeful disruption, right? We had the invention of the slave codes, the Black codes, Jim Crow laws, and everything you can imagine that disrupted the progress of former slaves in this country. And then you had the second Reconstruction. That happened during the time of the 50s and 60s, leading up to the passage of the Voters' Rights Act in 1965. And so, as you all know, tremendous work being done by Martin Luther King, by the Nation of Islam, by the Black Panther Party. Like, there's a lot of work that was being done on the ground in the community. And then what happens? Disruption, right? And so now we have Black Lives Matter. We have George Floyd. The world is, charged up. And you have everyone, really centered around this whole conversation about repairing, right? Reconstructing what has happened in this country, how Black and Brown people have been, murdered, right? Police, killing people in the street, all of these things that have been happening, right? But now, how do we ensure, especially on a local level, because if you think back, a lot of the laws that have passed were centered, on the federal, they happened on the federal level. But now, how do we ensure that during this time, during this movement, right, that, the country, even though we're still divided, seems to be reconstructing. How do we ensure that we put solutions in place on the ground in the local communities to make sure that we are never disrupted again? So with that being said, I'd like to formally introduce Dr. Wallace Ford. Is Dr. Ford on? I'm not seeing him on camera.
He's on.
He's on, okay, perfect.
Yeah, I've been waiting for a while. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. So I'll have Dr. Wallace Ford, Lorette Farris, and Nia Rock introduce themselves. Dr. Ford, can you introduce yourself, sir?
Sure. Good morning to colleagues, and certainly pleasure to be here today, and to have an opportunity to discuss what's obviously a very important perspective. We may on this panel have kind of different perspectives or views on the general subject matter, but let it suffice on specifics of the subject matter. But the general subject matter certainly is one that I think we all could agree to, which is that as we speak today in 2021, we're at a pivotal moment, certainly for the national Black community, when it comes to issues of both economic development, political development, and literally existence in this nation. And that is not an overstatement. I'll explain why in a few minutes. But to the points that Ms. Muhammad was mentioning, history shows that the first Reconstruction, such as it was envisioned to be something a lot different than what actually took place. Whatever else we know about Abraham Lincoln, we know that people are subject to change and new visions. And the Abraham Lincoln who was around in 1865 was very different from the Abraham Lincoln who was elected president in 1860. And one of the things that he recognized is that political power and economic power were going to be necessary for the totally disenfranchised enslaved people to have a fair chance at both surviving and prospering. And so his plan really was one that involved that 40 acres and a mule is not just a tagline. It was really the idea that the formerly enslaved people would have property and the resources to be able to exploit that property for their own and community benefit. That was the plan. The other plan was that, and this is important to note in terms of current events, it really is, the ability to vote, the power to vote was critical, and they could not be disconnected. Okay, the power to vote has always been a pivotal point in terms of the power struggle between the national Black community and, of course, white America. Those are the two things that he spoke of that in his second inaugural address in March of 1865, and in the audience was John Wilkes Booth. And John Wilkes Booth, when he heard Lincoln speaking about granting Black people the right to vote, even more than the issue of any type of economic restitution, that's when he swore to kill him. And of course he did. And when he did kill Abraham Lincoln just a few weeks after the inauguration, the plans for Reconstruction were totally derailed by the new president, Andrew Johnson, who's from Tennessee and was an avowed and stated white supremacist. And so while some Union generals had begun that 40 acres and a mule business, that was all just withdrawn by executive order by Andrew Johnson. And it became very clear that the only reparations that were ever paid by this country after the Civil War were to the slave owners for the loss of their property. I put that in quotes, of course, and because the property were our great grandparents and forebears, but that's the only that's the only reparations that were ever paid out. And the right to vote was basically codified in the Constitution. It had to be put into the Constitution because the remnants of power in the South and also places like New York weren't really particularly in favor of Black people being able to vote. And so we have this notion that there's 3 separate amendments in the United States Constitution. There's only 27. There's 3 separate amendments which are specifically focused on Black people, just to recognize our humanity. The 13th Amendment, abolishing slavery. The 14th Amendment saying that if you were born in this country, you are a citizen. Okay, because this, people are saying, yeah, you're free, but you're not a citizen. Yeah, no, you're a citizen. And then the 15th Amendment, which granted Black males the right to vote, and of course that's a whole other issue about females, and that, of course, came with a later amendment in 1920, 19th Amendment, I believe. But we're the only people that needed specific amendments just to ascertain our humanity. Now, Ms. Muhammad, I wasn't clear on the time frame, and so I don't want to launch into my usual 4-hour Castro-like speech. Right.
No, it's fine, Dr. Ford. So what we will do, or what we plan to do, is have all the panelists introduce themselves so that our attendees know who's on the panel, and then we'll just go into the questions. And then once we ask the questions, then you'll be able to expand.
Okay, well, so I'll do something I rarely do, which is shut up then. Okay.
No, you're fine.
There's a lot more obviously to talk about. So let me just.
That means we have to have a part 2. That's all.
Okay, fair enough. Okay then.
Lorette, can you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you all for suffering through hearing my recitation also. I'm Lorette Farris. I'm a former investment banker, and today I am the Chief Operating Officer and Fund Manager for a company called We.Global. And to what LaShawn was, just bringing up to talk about, because I am a product of Wall Street, Black Wall Street is what resonates within my system. And so for me, working in communities, there's a huge project we're doing in Baltimore, working in communities and helping us understand how we bring our own capital to the table so that those that want to tell us what to do or how to do it, we don't walk away from those dollars, but those dollars are diminished. And so as we continue the conversation about how do we take hold now in a way that we don't lose what we started, that's my direction. But again, my fear is where today's climate is and thinking about Black Wall Street.
Thank you, Lorette. Nia?
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much, Ms. Muhammad, for considering me and asking me to join the panel today. Very exciting conversation that we have ahead of ourselves. And I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Nia Rock. I'm a community development banker. I'm a veteran banking professional in this field of community development and CRA for over 30 years. And I have, so my focus in my work in CRA and community development is to hope to bring strategic financing, investment, and other strategies to preserve and develop communities. I'm really, what I do want to mention is that there's just a slight change that should be in my introduction, that I was with Customers Bank for many years, and I'm presently with Bank United. Bank United is a bank that's located primarily in the South, based in Florida. And my responsibility here in New York is to bring investment opportunities to the communities within New York, particularly within Kings County and Manhattan, New York County. So thank you very much, and looking forward to engaging.
Thank you so much, Nia. And so the first question I'll actually pose to Dr. Ford, so that you can continue the conversation that you started during your introduction. So the first question is, looking back at history during the first Reconstruction period, as you mentioned, right? What were some of the most impactful policies and laws that were passed that helped former slaves? So we know that the 40 acres and the mule that was supposed to happen didn't happen. But were there any, I guess, policies and laws or any activities that actually helped to develop communities like the Black Wall Streets and the other, I think it's Chapel Hill, North Carolina, those independent communities? What were some of the things that happened that actually helped with progress?
Most of the progress, and yeah, as I mentioned earlier, and of course, Ms. Muhammad, I just saw my notes from you with respect to time frame. So my apologies. You know, I stay locked up all day like most of us, and so I don't get a chance to talk to people much. So, but I'll follow the 5 Bs. Be brief, brother. Be brief. Okay. So I've already mentioned the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Those are critical when we're talking about you know, what happened after the Civil War, and those amendments actually are critical to this very day, particularly obviously the 14th and 15th Amendments, and we're seeing an incredible, you know, something that really has not been seen historically on such a scale. Efforts to roll back the ability of Black people to vote is taking place in 43 states. Over 200 pieces of legislation have either been passed, as they were already in Arizona, for example, and Georgia, and also you know, but what's different today, and we'll talk about that later, of course, but going back to 13th, 14th, 15th, definitely those. I would submit that you know, just about everything that was accomplished, whether you're talking about Black Wall Street in Oklahoma or other communities have been able to make some kind of progress. It was in spite of, almost always in spite of the policies, yeah, because as we teach at Medgar College in our public administration courses, and my colleagues who know this, it's not just the law, it's the enforcement. Okay, and if you don't enforce the law, it might as well not even be on the books. And what we know is what happened in 1876 when Rutherford B. Hayes basically sold out Black America in order to become president of the United States, or was a New York governor, as a matter of fact. Samuel Tilden actually won the popular vote, but he lost in the Electoral College because of a deal that Rutherford B. Hayes made with the South to withdraw the troops from the South, Union troops from the South, so-called occupation troops, and that left Black people in quite a lurch. So the examples that were given are really anomalies. It is, you know, when history will show that any review of history shows it's almost impossible to describe how difficult it was for Black Americans even to just earn a living. You referred to Ms. Muhammad, to like the Black Codes, for example, as an example. There's also something called the sundown laws, okay, which is that you better be out of this town by sundown, because not only would you be arrested, you would be convicted. Okay, you would be convicted, and then you would then you would be put basically on a prison farm someplace as unpaid labor for these former slaveholders. So it's hard to describe. So what happened was really in spite of, and you saw what happened, for example, in Tulsa in 1919, for example, and that's that, you know, and you know, we've been the victims of domestic terrorism, really ever since emancipation. And the last thing I'll say is that when we talk about that so-called Great Migration, people say, well, people doing it for economic opportunity. Many people who are involved in that Great Migration could correctly be described as refugees from domestic violence, as we see happening in Syria, we see it happening in Myanmar, we see it happened here in these United States for over half a century. When you look at the history, last thing I'll mention, but I think this is really important. I don't know of many Black Americans, if their families any members of their family came from the South, somebody from that family had to leave town. Okay, like tonight. Okay, because they talked back, they got into an argument, an altercation with a white person. That's a reign of terror that our people were living in for all that time. And coming up north, so to speak, it was no picnic either. So I'll end on that.
No, thank you so much for mentioning that. And that's why this conversation in the context of this conference is so important, right? Because we have to understand the history. And if we're talking about, you know, creating this system or ecosystem, or creating ways and pathways for wealth building, right? For generating wealth for our children, for the following generations, we have to understand our history and understand what happened, so that we can make sure that, you know, things and people are put in place that will enforce whatever laws are on the books, right? And that we just take care of building our own independent system. That's what's really important. And so that's why the context of this conversation is so crucial, so that we really understand what happened. So I know we're limited on time, so I'm just going to move forward in history towards the second Reconstruction, which happened, you know, during the 60s, right? In the passage of the so-called Voters' Rights Act. And so the second question is, you know, during the civil rights movement that led to radical change, right, to a degree, how were local communities impacted? So, you know, now Professor Ford, you talked about what happened, you know, after the Civil War, during the riots, Black Wall Street. Now we're at, some decades ahead in the civil rights movement. What are some of the on the local level and that's the question for anybody to pick up.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to talk a little bit about what occurred a decade later in the 70s, a couple of decades later in the 70s. Of course, everything that happened throughout the entire history that we're discussing through the 50s and the 60s, which we call the civil rights movement, led to events that occurred around the country, and particularly, concentrated in Chicago, where the where the fair lending and equal housing rights legislation was born, and also where the Community Reinvestment Act was instigated. And I say instigated because, again, we have always had to, as communities, advocate for our rights, regardless of what the laws were. So through that period of time, the CRA and so forth was created out of community engagement. And the CRA is an act of Congress that requires financial institutions to reinvest dollars in low and moderate income communities where they take deposits. Now, why reinvest in those communities? Because the banking industry has a very long history. The banking industry has a very long history of disinvestment in Black and poor communities. There are not only that, but not to take us back historically, but I will say that the banking industry also has had, a key has been a key beneficiary of slavery in the first place. Has been investors in the activity of enslaving African people and transporting them to the United States. Fleet Bank, a bank, focused on, the shipping business, for instance. But I won't go, further into that detail. However, when we talk about the CRA was for the purpose was pulling deposits. Yes, we migrated throughout, away from the South and to the North and other parts of the country where, we thought that, there was safety. And, but however, and then deposited our small deposits within banks. Banks took those deposits and invested them in white communities. So the CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act, was developed in response to community activism and in order to take those deposits and invest them in those communities where those deposits are generated. And so again, my experience in banking is largely relating to the CRA and community development, and working collaboratively with groups that represent local community needs to make those reinvestments. So that would be in housing, in affordable housing, in workforce development, in the creation and support of small businesses and so forth. Now, the CRA, by the way, has been kind of truncated to, a few buzzwords, that really talk about reinvesting in all communities, including low and moderate income communities. However, the strength of the CRA is that it is, as I said, born out of community engagement. And so one of the things, so the CRA is under reform right now. And one of the biggest challenges against one of the agencies that tried to move forward, so all the banking agencies, the Federal Reserve Bank, the Office of the Controller of the Currency, and the FDIC are responsible for implementing the CRA. So the OCC has moved forward with language regarding the CRA and has left behind the other agencies. The communities community organizations that are watchdogs of the CRA have rejected the notion that one agency can move forward without fully engaging the response of communities, because after all, this is an act of Congress that is for the purpose of investing in communities. And although, you know, we say low and moderate income communities, you know, many of those communities, it's not to be confused with Black and brown communities necessarily, other than the fact that Black and brown communities have ostensibly been disinvested. And so therefore have become quote unquote low and moderate income communities. They're not necessarily the same, but they're often the same. So again, policy. And we have to really think about how we engage locally in our local politics, supporting, you know, being involved in the conversation before that particular act sweeps us out of the dialogue. The other policies that were enacted around the same time, again, as I mentioned, were the Fair Housing Act, and similarly, well, HMDA, Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, was preceded CRA, and that was an act of Congress that required that banks disclose who they are lending to with those, through those deposits that they're gathering. So those have become the tenets of what we now consider to be some of the banking laws that sometimes are fulfilled and sometimes are not. And, you know, we are in a process, and it's very likely, by the way, that, you know, we've kind of missed some of the commentary period. We're past some of the commentary period for the implementation of the new CRA, but I know the Federal Reserve Bank will probably be re-engaging community in that discussion. And I think it's important that we do engage so that we're representative in that discussion. The Fair Housing Act has disenfranchised Black and brown people around the country, you know, by building a system actually where it was designed actually to fight a system, but has not had enough teeth in the regulation to have communities find other alternative means. And I think that was part of the discussion, the disengagement of some of these acts to, you know, prevent, you know, Black and brown people from living in certain communities. So that might be in the form of, you know, creating low-rise housing, or only single-family housing, or creating, you know, or municipalities creating real estate lots, or requiring only that real estate lots are of a certain size so that fewer people can live in those places. So these are the kinds of things that we have to be really mindful of. There is a movement, not just with the Voting Rights Act, which is really major, but also a movement to, you know, against, you know, the concentration of families and individuals in certain parts of the country. You know, and that's one of the reasons that our real estate values are so incredibly high right now, because land is scarce, housing is scarce, and so many municipalities around the country reject the notion. They'll put it into their community plan that's required by HUD every few years, but simply have a dialogue and never quite get to the place where affordable housing in fact is being built. So we have to be involved at local levels. We have to engage the way we are engaging today. We have to know that we have a stake in the game, not just a stake in the game, but we have a voice at the table if we take that voice, if we make our voices heard. And I yield for the remainder of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nia. Everything you said was so critical, because, and I hope that everybody, you know, it's a lot of information to take in, right? And thankfully this is being recorded. So my hope is that, you know, these conversations, every panel, every conversation that's happening during the conference, that we go back and we really study, right? Some of the issues that have been raised, some of the challenges that have been raised, and think about ways that you are going to activate yourself, right? To make sure that you are actively reaching out to your elected officials on all levels, city, state, and federal, to ask these really important questions, right? Because these are the things that we need to make sure that those who are in office, that this is a priority for them, right? This is very critical. And so I will ask Lorette. I'm going to ask the last question. We have 3 questions. I'm going to shift this question over to Lorette. Present day, we have the election of Joe Biden, right? We have the election of the first woman of color vice president, Kamala Harris, right? We have, again, movements like Black Lives Matter. And as we stated earlier, the country remains divided. How do we take advantage of the current Reconstruction movement to develop local solutions that lead to a sustainable future for Black and Brown communities?
I love the question, and I'm going to step back 2 administrations in order to talk about a regulation that does just that. So President Obama passed what's called the Jobs Act of 2012. Well, that is a regulation that changed a lot of I shouldn't say a lot. That's a regulation that changed security laws that had not been changed in years. But what that change has done is it's created an ability for early stage startup, young newbie companies to raise capital in the equity marketplace in a way that they were never able to do it before. But additionally, it changed how investors could engage with them. So when we come fast forward to today, and when we talk about the various things that's coming out of Congress and what President Biden will be able to do, we as individuals and our businesses are in the best position that has happened in quite some time to be able to monetize our business, capitalizing them, because now all of a sudden, everybody wants to throw money at us because of a lot that I hear in the space that I'm in is, and a lot of the activity happened as a result, unfortunately, of George Floyd and what happened there. So now you have venture, you have angel, you have venture capital, angel investors, you have the social impact investors that everyone feels that they need to throw money into the minority community all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. We need to position ourselves to be able to take that money, but use it in a right way. What I mean by a right way, a small example is even when we start talking about the opportunity zone and the funds that come available for that. Well, in our communities, if you don't know how to take that money in the right way, it could be more detrimental than it can be to help. We need to ensure that we have a plan. If we're going to take in money, that money is only good for 10 years. We got to understand what are we doing when 10 years from now, the big investors are pulling that money back out. So if we took it in just thinking, ooh, we got this capital, let's do, but we didn't plan for what needs to happen 10 years from now, our communities will again be devastated by it. So for me, it's learning how to use the regulations that are available to us to use to capitalize our businesses. And those are some standard capital raising vehicles that's been around since the 40s Act. It's just that now all of a sudden they can be utilized by early stage startup companies. So one of the things I really enjoy doing is that whole training, I don't want to call it training, but educating folks on how to put together what I call community capital. How do you educate enough stakeholders in the community so that you know how to do it? And now from community to community within, you can start putting together investment clubs. You can start doing real estate investment funds. There are so many ways that, and LaShawn, we talk about, you know, what you're doing there in Brownsville. There are so many ways that you can bring capital to the table. We just have to know how to do it and stop thinking we have to keep chasing venture capital. Venture does it. The percentage of money we get in from venture capital, okay, wonderful. But we can empower ourselves if we just, you know, follow some of those regulations that are available for us for the moment. And to me, that will start changing things directly within our community, but we will have control as we do it that way.
Thank you so much, Lorette. Again, just critical information shared by you, Nia, Rock, and Dr. Ford. Thank you so much. And so we have about 8 minutes left in our segment. And so we can take this opportunity. I don't know if you can hear the background. I also have remote schooling happening. So if you hear it, you know, and again, I don't mind because he's excited. This is my son. He's excited about learning, whatever they're doing in class right now. He's yelling and I'm happy. So, but the, you know, so we have 8 minutes left, and I want to take some questions. I did see a question pop up in the chat. And so I don't want to, if someone needs clarity, you know, I want to take some time to actually answer some questions. So I believe it was Brother Roz. How are you doing, sir? Roz O'Meal Morgan asked, what role does cooperatives like Mondragon of Spain place in community development? So it's interesting. So Spain, there was I guess a consortium of elected officials and community folks. I believe maybe some folks from Medgar also traveled to Spain to look at their worker cooperative model. It's a great model, and I'm happy to announce that we are working on a similar model in Brownsville. So the building that you see behind me, it doesn't exist yet, right? So we're talking about, as Lorette stated, right, planning, positioning ourselves, right, future state. And so this is a building that's part of a community investment called the Brownsville Plan. And one of the things that we're going to be, this will be a business center, a 7,000 square foot business center. Medgar will be a part of it, School of Business, because not only are we raising funds, as Lorette said, to make sure that we are providing funding for our local businesses, right? But we're also providing space. So including in that space will be worker cooperatives, you know, pretty much like you may have experienced or you may have been informed about in Spain. And so we're working with the CUNY Law School. As some of you may know that they have a worker cooperative lab. And so they have signed on to work with us in Brownsville to help us build out a curriculum around helping local businesses create worker co-ops. Any other questions, clarifications? I see Raquel. I think are we at time, Raquel?
No, you still have time. You have another 5 minutes.
Okay, awesome.
Can I make mention of just one item, which is you know, words matter, of course, and terminology is important. And I understand the theme with respect to Reverend Barber's analysis, and I certainly wouldn't argue with that. But I would state that when we're looking at the civil rights movement, I think it's important that we understand that what we saw in the 50s and the 60s was the result of a sustained effort of about 100 years. Okay, and it's so, you know, because people, you know, my students, they think, well, okay, Martin Luther King gave a speech. So there was a sit-in on the bus, and then Martin Luther King gave a speech, and then these things were passed, and then it was all good. Okay, we're really talking about literally about a century of effort to get to the point with a lot of people whose names aren't remembered, who literally died or gave their lives. Now, the thing about the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act about 1965 is something that I write about sometimes, and I'll put a link to the columns that we write about this. The law of unintended consequences. Everybody wanted to be able to stay at whatever hotel they wanted to. Everybody wanted to be able to go to whatever restaurant they wanted to. Everybody wanted to be able to live in whatever neighborhood they wanted to. Okay, and so while that millennium didn't actually totally occur, today everybody here pretty much can go many places that they want to. The only question is what's in your wallet, as they say, right? And so that's fine. But Black businesses wind up evanescing in that process, because if people say, well, if I can stay at the Marriott downtown, why am I going to stay at the Hotel Teresa up on 125th Street, right? And so on. And so we've seen, whether it's involved with banking, okay, whether it's involved in insurance companies, even funeral homes, for goodness sake, you know, and all of those were part of the larger Black business community that we honestly are not going to see again. Okay, and so the question is, I think, as we go forward, how do we, you know, adapt this notion of Black economic empowerment to the new realities? There's Amazon, you know, there's Uber, there's these conglomerates all over the places that aren't going anywhere. Okay, and so the question is, where is the role? Where's the space? Where's the place for us? You know, and I just think it's real important to be real about what we're dealing with at this point.
But to that point, Dr. Ford, I think, again, it's a matter of planning and understanding, right? Amazon is looking for vendors. They are supposedly specifically looking for minority business owners as vendors. So I think at minimum, it's a matter of knowing who's doing what and where is there space for us. And we just got to get our businesses prepared to jump into those spaces.
You're absolutely right. You just have to learn how to dance with, but ride the tiger, right? You know, so you don't want to fall off. That's for sure. Yeah, because that's just there's meal time for the tiger. But that's, you're absolutely right. You know, you cannot possibly compete with Amazon.
Right.
You know, and right. So you know, where's the point of collaboration and opportunity? Absolutely.
We have a raised hand and we have a question in the chat box.
So yeah, the question from Dr. Price, he asked, what role does digital transformation play in economic and community development? Lorette, you want to pick that up? Lorette also has a tech background.
Just know, everyone, when she says that, I hurt myself more often thinking I'm more techie than I am. But I think the biggest issue with that question really are the communities that are still not plugged in. Those of us that are plugged into technology, even if there's a certain thing we don't know, we can find it out, figure it out, or have somebody make it happen for us. But there's too many of our community that are still not plugged in, whether it's because of lack of resources, they don't have a computer, a laptop, or whatever, or they've always been involved in the type of businesses that just don't use communication. I work with a contractor who that's all he's ever done was contracting. So he never, I mean, the cell phone, of course, he knows how to work that, but going online to do things. So I think the digital divide is still here. I think we still need to have some concerns about it. And you know, policy wise, I don't know what to do about that. Again, I think it's resources for those that don't have. When this pandemic came about and the kids had to do homeschooling and you started understanding the statistics of how many of our children couldn't do it because there was no internet service into their homes or no laptop or no so you know, I'm babbling on because I don't know what the answer is to it. I just know that there is a deep group of folks that the digital divide is real.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to step in and just make a quick comment about that because, you know, I quickly stated that, you know, under the CRA that banks are often look at the obvious, you know, those obvious disenfranchisements that communities have suffered. But that disenfranchisement continues, and it continues through, you know, current day, and it includes the technological divide. So not all banks do make that investment, but they, you know, the CRA does encourage investing in an innovative way, and that's the place that I like to focus because there, you know, we can talk about the challenges of affordable housing and so forth and so on, you know, ad nauseum. That problem exists and it has to be addressed and must be addressed. But there is a place because, as you mentioned, Lynette, corporations are almost falling over themselves, trying to make investments into communities right now,
Right.
because their customers are holding their feet to the fire, right? And so that, but there is so much opportunity, and this is what I recommend the banks invest in. There are some large banks, I won't name names, but there's some very large banks that have billions, not millions, billions of dollars on the table to spend right now. And not, so we have to be aware of what those dollars are available for. I tend to support programs that do support linking communities to technology, because that's where so much of the job development and creation will be in the coming years. If we're not engaged technologically, then we're not engaged at all. We will again be in positions of being left behind because we're not able to take advantage of whatever those opportunities are. So we have to have a long-term view. We have to put our investment dollars, and when I say we, I'm speaking about the banking community and other corporate entities that make investments into communities, into really making fundamental change for communities, not just some of the old check the box activities that allow the institution to kind of get off the hook and get what people like to call CRA credit. There's no such thing, but consideration for that particular work that they've done. But in any event, the question was also about Mondragon Corporation. So that's another innovative way that financial institutions and others can invest in community ownership. And that's where we need to continue to focus our investment dollars. And I yield.
Thank you so much. So we are at time, and I know we had another question. Erica, thank you for that.
If I could just use Dean's privilege, Terrence Biggs had his hand up at the end of the last time. He's had his hand up, and he is one of our well, I'll just say oldest alumni. So I would like for him to be able to get his question in.
Absolutely. I didn't see the hand. I'm so sorry. Yes, please ask your question.
I've totally enjoyed this this session. I'm constantly, as a technology person, constantly looking at a lot of what we discuss as a people through the lens of technology. And AI was devastating several industries before COVID came on the scene. A lot of CEOs are using the cloud from COVID to explain why their numbers are down. But to be honest, technology was already putting a lot of businesses out of business. And that still continues, and it's going to continue even after COVID. So my concern is when you look at our communities, that there tends to be a lack of technical skills. And if the future of work is reserved for those who can come up with digital solutions that we now fulfill non-digitally, it seems like at some point as a people, we need to come together and address the phobia of technology. I mean, I talk to folk all the time. It's like, I don't do email. I'm like, email, that's not technology. It's communication.
That's right.
So I think at some point there needs to be a broader conversation that admittance to the next definition of what we call work, the coin that you're going to need to go through the turnstile is going to be having a proficiency in technology, and especially in AI. I mean, I'm looking at what AI is doing now. It's just laying off folk by the millions.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue. Initially, we thought it was simply just laying off folk who were doing repetitive tasks. Now we're looking at AI replacing attorneys, accountants. So there's going to be a shrink. There's a shrink that's already in place. And somehow we always end up on the shorter end of the stick. So I think it is a conversation that we need to maybe take a deeper dive on.
Thank you very much for that. That was a critical point to raise. And thank you, Erica. You also said great point. And I want to just acknowledge your statement. May it be, controversial, not sure. But, these companies like the Amazon and these large companies, her question or statement was, well, should we consider, buying into or not buying into or, participating in a way where we also, sort of, I guess, benefit from being a part of it. So it's a question, and I think all things should be considered. The point is that we need to strategize, and whatever that strategy is and plan for the next 100 years, right? We need to be thinking about the future, right? This conference is about wealth building, right? Building wealth for our generations to follow, right? So what we do today will be their history. So we gotta do good. We gotta do some good work. So, but on the point about technology, I just want to state, I put it in the chat, there is a Brooklyn Tech Week event coming up June 23rd through the 27th. I invite everyone to participate. I put the link in the chat to the website. We are participating, we are being a part of it. More are welcome. And on that note, and so also Dr. Ford put his website in the chat. So please, because he is a wealth of knowledge. And so I just want to take this time to say thank you so much to Dr. Dean Roll, to Dr. Zarbabal, Professor Crump, Raquel, Roxanne, the entire Medgar Evers School of Business team. Thank you so much for putting this together. It was phenomenal. I'll be back at 125 though, with another conference. So I was also asked to bring on the next speaker. We're going into break at 12 noon with Dr. Maria Luisa Ruiz. So again, officially, my name is LaShawn Muhammad, Executive Director of Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation. It was such a pleasure. Thank you, my panelists, so much. This was amazing. Dr. Ford, Lorette Farris, and Nia Rock. Thank you all so much. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, LaShawn. Can you just stop sharing your screen? Yes, Dr. Maria Luisa Ruiz is coming up to bring us a quick 5-minute stretch break. We've been sitting in front of our computers all this time, and to stay healthy so that we can do all this technology and manage our businesses and our finances, Dr. Ruiz is going to show us how to do a little stretching while we're here in front of our computers. Dr. Ruiz, you're up. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Yeah, I've been listening to the end of your presentation and conference. So if you feel like joining me, what I'm going to ask you is to make sure you have room and in front of you to move your arms and to stand up, because we're going to be standing up a little bit. So I know I have only 5 minutes, but this is something you can do by yourself every time when you're sitting in front of your computer. Besides shaking your posture and moving your shoulders up and down, what is recommended is to stand up every hour. Don't stay more than 1 hour in front of your computer, because it's not so good for your back, your lower back, your middle back, your upper back, your neck. We have a tendency to be like this all the time when we want to have a long spine and really feel the connection of the head on the neck, the mobility of the neck, and the relaxation of the shoulder. So let's do it quickly but efficiently. So just bring your hands on your knees and find a way to bring your shoulders down. And you can close your eyes and just take a deep inhale. Exhaling, opening your mouth. You can even make a sound. And each time, feel the expansion of your chest in the inhale and the relaxation, coming a little bit down in the exhale. Your muscles becoming softer in the exhale. So do this one more time. Inhale, feel the chest opening, and exhale. Releasing everything. Good. One more time. Inhale and exhale. We're going to do it now, bringing the arms up in front of us in the inhale and bringing them down in the exhale. So inhale. Exhale the arms down. One more time like this. Inhale through the nose. Exhale. You can use the mouth. And this time we're going to come up in the inhale and go back to seat in the exhale, trying to have our hips being the first thing touching the seat. Okay? So here we go. Inhale. Use your legs to come up. Exhale. Slowly, 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 slowly. Yeah, this is very good for the legs. So let's do this one more time. Inhale. Press on the feet, extend the legs. Exhale, bend the knees, make your back long, 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 long. Let your hips touch the seat and bring your arms down. One more time. Inhale. And exhale, 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 exhale. Good. So you're warming up at the same time. One last time. Inhale. Coming all the way up. And exhale, exhale, exhale all the way down. So this is something you can do easily by yourself. Another thing we're going to do, and I know the time is running, so I'm gonna show you these two more exercises that you can do by yourself anytime, sitting in front of your computer. So make sure your sit bones are touching the chair. So just bring them to splash on the chair. Come to the edge of your chair. Make sure your knees are making a 90-degree angle, okay, with the floor. And here, again, we're going to bring the chin down to the chest very slowly. Slowly, 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 slowly. In the exhale. And in the inhale, we're going to bring the head. Not all the way back, just straight. Okay? So we really want to feel this coming up and going down. So do it with your breath. It's very important to connect the breath and the movement. So let's start one more time. You can close your eyes. Inhale here. And exhale slowly, slowly, slowly. Bring your chin to your chest and feel the stretch in the neck. Inhale, come all the way back up. Exhale, one more time. Try to keep your shoulders in place. Don't bring the shoulders up with the neck, the head, sorry. And exhale. Inhale, coming back up. So you can do this very slowly. The slower you go, actually, the better it is to feel the neck. And then you can try to decide. So imagine is your chin guiding the movement. So you inhale here. And you slowly exhale, as if you want to bring your chin to your shoulder. And you inhale, coming back to the center. And you exhale to the other side. And you inhale back to the center as slow as you can. If you want, you can put one hand here to feel that your chest remain facing, and exhale to the other side. You can do this 3-4 times on each side, and then you can do the full circle. So you inhale here, that's the last one, and tomorrow I will show you more things. You inhale, and you exhale down, feel the back, and you roll your head slowly, slowly, feeling each side of your neck. And you do one more circle on this side, and one more circle. And if you want, you can do 3 more. Inhaling up, exhaling down. So as you see, we have changed the rotation direction. So 3, starting to the left, and 3, starting to the right. All right. So I think that was a little bit more than 5 minutes, but it's difficult to do only 5 minutes. So tomorrow I will show you more things for the arms and for the legs, and how you can give yourself a nice massage to release tension. Thank you so much for inviting me, Raquel. And,
thank you. I had to mute the sound so nobody would hear my bones creaking.
Yeah. And have a nice continuation this afternoon, and be well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So I thank again Dr. Maria Luisa for bringing that to us. Dr. Maria Luisa is a professor in our language studies department here at the college, and has been with us at Medgar for many years. And I thank her for bringing her talents to share with the conference. Now, next we have the business of Bitcoin, and we are going to feature Naja Roberts of Crypto Blockchain Plug. And Naja, I welcome you, and you're set to go.
All right, thank you. This has been an incredible. I've been on since the first minute. That first speech coming out the gate was just awesome. And I just have enjoyed it thoroughly, and just want to thank you all for the opportunity. We are here to talk to you today about the business of Bitcoin. This picture is really, I've heard a lot of people talking and speeches. And this picture at the beginning of this actually is what I'm feeling. I'm feeling the digital divide. I'm feeling that's us in the middle of a technology desert in our communities. And we've got to do some things about it. And I've heard many solutions to that. And I think that there are many solutions, and we're going to just bring one of those to you today. And just to tell you really quickly about me, I'm the founder of Crypto Blockchain Plug, which is the first cryptocurrency bank in the US, Black-owned, woman-owned. We actually buy and sell crypto and educate our community. We have a crypto kids camp. Right now, I'm the president of National Congress of Black Women here in Los Angeles, the South Bay chapter. And I have a lot of community ties, so I'm really seeing the effects of the digital divide. Done several TV shows talking and trying to engage our community in understanding cryptocurrency. And we'll move through lots of speaking engagements, and I appreciate again being and having the opportunity to speak for you all today. So I think in order for us to understand some of the digital things that are taking place, you've got to understand really the evolution of money. And before I go into anything about Bitcoin, we need to understand how in the world we got to where we are right now. And so as we go through that, I'm just going to quickly take us through the evolution of money. So I thoroughly believe that if you know better, you do better. And I also believe that the thing that we've been taught our entire lives, and we've heard people say, what you don't know won't hurt you. I am saying complete the opposite. Family, what you don't know will absolutely hurt you. So as we go into really learning about where we are, where we sit, I have a question for everyone. I want to just know, is the Federal Reserve Bank a federal entity? And in the chat, I'd like to hear from those of you who, what do you say? Is the Federal Reserve a federal entity? And I'll give you a second to just check yes or no. If you may be too embarrassed about it, just hold it to yourself. But is the Federal Reserve, somebody said no, we got a bunch of no's. Well, I will let you all know who think the answer is yes. Our Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express. And so what that is and what that means to us is, who actually put the Federal Reserve Bank together? Well, for those of you that are writing notes, I would like for you to go to YouTube at your leisure and look for a video called The Creatures of Jekyll Island. These individuals that are on our screen today are the grandfathers of the Federal Reserve. Maybe some of those banks that you know quite well, and I'm telling you, there are many of them. These are the same bankers that in our community in 2019, because we don't have the 2020 numbers yet, in 2019 took $60 billion from our community in NSF fees. That is those are the grandfathers of the Federal Reserve banks. And so as we move into understanding, whoever rules the money rules the world. So just understand that as we move forward. We started off in history always bartering. So we've gone from anything from salt, actual salt. I won't say table salt, I'll say sea salt. But we've gone from salt to tulips to several things in which people bartered. So we know that people started off in the human evolution doing bartering. Someone would give something for a good or services, or if someone had something else someone wanted, they just swapped it. It was just that easy. But bartering becomes hard when you need just the milk and not the entire cow, or if you need the entire cow, but you have to now give up 50 chickens. So people had to start figuring out ways to better divide up the things that they were bartering. And so we've had, like I said, in history, we've run into a lot of different things, sticks, stones, I mean, you name it, and we have done it because we are creative people and we look for solutions. And then we found this thing, it's called gold. And gold is being used as a store of value. So gold right now has been around, at least in the history of gold, from what I found in my research, over 5,000 years, we've been using gold as a store of value. And right now today, the market cap for gold is right at $10 trillion. So again, gold as a store of value has been used. And right now, all the monies in the world are estimated at about $10 trillion as the market cap. So what are the attributes of gold and why are people using it as a store of value? They've always used gold as a hedge against inflation because we know that inflation happens just depending on what's happening in the different country or the state of the union, but inflation is inevitable. We know that gold is used as an international acceptance. No matter where you go, if you have a bullion of gold or gold coins in your pocket, you can go to the local community and be able to cash that out for the local currency. Gold is scarce. It's a scarce asset. They're still mining for gold, trying to find it. But the more it run, the more they're not able to find it, the higher in the price it goes, and the different types of gold and different things like that. It's a scarce asset. It's highly liquid, as we stated. And again, as a store of value, there have been long-term returns on that gold. And so that's why people trust and know gold. Something interesting happened in the United States. So right around this date, and this is actually an actual document, April 5th of 1933, there was a presidential executive order that was posted at every post office, at every convenience store. And it basically said that gold that was being used as a store of value, and also, you know, of course, people would say how much gold they had to tell how wealthy they were. Every person in this United States had to turn their gold in by presidential executive order. And they didn't have to do it within a year. They didn't have to do it within a 6-month period. They had 3 weeks. Look at this date, April 5th through May 1st. They had 3 weeks to turn over any gold coins, bullions, or gold certificates to the Federal Reserve System or a branch or agency or member of the Federal Reserve System. So that gold was taken from each and every person here in the United States, and it was stored in Fort Knox, but again, given to the Federal Reserve System. That was what the order was. And if you did not do that, you would go to jail. And from 1933 to about 1974, and really the number is 71, but it's kind of a little bit foggy between 71 and 74, because something incredible happened. All the gold that was in Fort Knox disappeared. And nobody is talking about where that is, but our President Nixon in 1971 took us off the gold standard. But while that gold was in there, they had to start figuring out, what are we going to give these people in return? So they didn't have any more gold certificates because you had to turn them in. So they started coming up with all these ways to divide that coin to help people with their wealth, or just to understand how much wealth they had to be able to buy goods and services and do all those things. So metal coins came into play. And then we have this thing called fiat. And many of us have never heard of the word fiat because we just thought it was just the dollar bill, right? But fiat actually has a meaning. And fiat, if you look it up in the dictionary, it says that it is currency without an intrinsic value that has been established as money, often government regulated. Fiat money does not have a value other than that the government maintains is its value, or because parties engage and they agree to use it to make those exchanges and that value. So that is what fiat is. So I've already stated that our money is not backed by gold. So we don't have to even go through this anymore. A lot of people think that our money is backed by gold, but that gold has been long gone. And if you do a lot of research, they don't know where all these trucks disappeared to with the gold, but it's gone. And we are no longer on the gold standard. And so a lot of our youth, and I know I'm talking to the college, so we were hoping that there are lots of millennials on this call today that know this gentleman named Nipsey Hussle. He had been telling us for a very long time that anytime a country has transitioned to fiat currency, they just collapse. That's just world history. You don't have to know about cryptocurrency to know that. So he had been trying to talk to and teach our community about digital currencies when it wasn't popular, when nobody really knew about it. And now his words and his quotes and different things are starting to come to the forefront. But then we moved, or we're in the space right now of digital money already, because we are using credit cards. How many of you have gone to work, you get a direct deposit, and actually never even touch fiat, because you're able to go to the store, you're able to pay your car notes, you're able to pay your bills with credit cards, and you never even touch that fiat. So we're in this space right now in credit cards. Next, we move on to electronic money. So when we talk about digital and digital divide, this digital currency is already happening. We're using electronic money. So places like Zelle, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, all of these things are digital currencies because of the fact that it's kept on their databases or ledgers, but that money never actually passes through your hands. It just goes right on your phone. I'm able to pull up at McDonald's or wherever else I'm able to go. I can literally take out my phone, open up Apple Pay, hold my cell phone up to the cash register, the little handheld machine they have, put my thumbprint on my phone and pay for my goods and services. I do it everywhere with Apple Pay, hardly ever touching fiat money. So we're already there. But then next in this evolution of money is cryptocurrency. So people may ask, what is this cryptocurrency? I may have heard it. Before we get into it, I'll let you know that the digital revolution has begun, and the money in your pocket is worth less today than it was yesterday. So this cryptocurrency, this virtual currency, digital money, it lives online. They're not backed by anything. They are decentralized, meaning no one owns them. So when we look at our current system and the pros and cons and the differences, because they're both backed by nothing, right? Fiat is not backed by anything, and digital currency is not backed by anything. But I submit to you today that this is a decentralized system, whereas no one controls it and no one entity is able to monopolize and take advantage of a group of people or groups of people. That being said, I'm going to just talk to you because there are so many cryptocurrencies out there. They all serve a different purpose. At a later date, I can share that information with you. But today I'm going to talk about the new digital gold. And why do I call it the digital gold? Bitcoin specifically is what we're going to be talking about today, the business of Bitcoin. It was the first cryptocurrency created on the blockchain. You'll start hearing the buzzword blockchain, get a little bit into the roots of that. But blockchain is a technology that is beginning, as I heard someone else say, how AI is beginning to take over things and do some of the things. Blockchain is a technology, sort of like a database. So I'll say it really, really quickly and easily for the sake of time. A database does 4 different things. You're able to store information on, you're able to input information on a database. You store it there for everybody to use it. When you get ready, you can alter that information. And last but not least, if you don't like what's there, you just delete it. And that's happened throughout our African-American history a lot of times. But blockchain is this new technology that only allows you to do 2 things. You store information there and everybody is able to share it. It cannot be altered and it cannot be deleted. And what that does is it takes the trust mechanism out of things, because I no longer have to trust you because it's on a distributed ledger that everyone can see and no one can change or alter it. So that kind of changes the dynamics of things. So as it relates to Bitcoin, digital money being on the blockchain, the numbers are the numbers. What it is what it is. I don't have to trust the next person. I don't have to do any of those things because cryptocurrency on the blockchain has now changed the dynamics of trusting or having to look to someone else for the valuation of an asset. And so we'll talk about that in a second. Bitcoin allows the exchange of value over the internet. That was its original intention. And so as we talk about that again, there's no intermediaries. It gives the users their balance immediately. It's private, semi-private, I'll say that. It's very secure, and at the same time, it's open source. How long has Bitcoin been around? It's been around 12 years. And I want to bring something very important to the forefront today. Gold has a market cap of $10 trillion. It's been around 5,000 years. Bitcoin has been around 12 years specifically and has today $1.1 trillion market cap. So I am considering Bitcoin specifically our new digital gold. And I would think that as you start to read and you start to hear, last year this time, nobody was talking about Bitcoin. This day, yesterday, every news station is talking about Bitcoin. In fact, I'm just shocked as how quick we've come to this point. But the attributes of Bitcoin, I have the same exact screen that I had up talking about gold. The attributes are, it's a store of value. And some may disagree, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's a store of value. It is absolutely a hedge against inflation. It's internationally accepted, depending on where you go, but a lot of different countries are accepting Bitcoin as a currency. There are actual cities that use nothing except Bitcoin. It's a scarce asset, and we'll talk about that in a second. It's highly liquid. You can take your Bitcoin to any country, and where there is an exchange, you can go and you can cash out for that currency in that town or that country. Long-term returns. Bitcoin, if you look at it, has done over 200% annually on its return. And so we will touch on that in just a second. Why was Bitcoin actually brought into existence? There was a person, and we won't get into who they are. We don't know whether it's a man, a woman, a person, but I always say, and I have it on the back of my cell phone, Satoshi is Black. So Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever this person is that wrote the code on the blockchain called Bitcoin, all they wanted to do was give the power to the people. And we've been hearing power to the people in our community forever. But this is actual power to the community. And I submit to you today, Black family, white family, Asian family, Hispanic family, it is time to play chess, because our governments all over the world have monopolized and been able to do the things that they do because they control the money. He who controls the money controls the world. It's time to play chess. It's time to give the power to the people. And Bitcoin is one of the ways that we are going to do that. So Bitcoin being scarce. So there's only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be mined. And all that means is these coins, again, because people are learning, there is no physical coin. It is all 100% digital. But in this code that Satoshi Nakamoto wrote, it stated that there would only be 21 million of these coins. Why did he, she, or they do that? They did that because during the height of the 2008-2009 fall apart of the world, we saw where the banks were getting back the houses that they had loaned to us. So not only did they have the asset, then they got the bailout for the asset, and somebody decided, you know what, no more, because they're in control of all the money. And so what we're going to do, and they're printing all the money, which this week we printed $1.9 trillion, probably more than that. I got so many numbers running through my head. But what this person or this group of people decided, that we're going to have a scarce asset that people are going to be allowed to participate in order to change our financial trajectory based on what they saw happening in 2009 during the height of the bailouts to the banks. And so that's how Bitcoin was actually birthed. And it is about teaching our community a scarce asset that they can participate in. And we'll talk about how in a minute. So this thing called Bitcoin, and I use this red, black, and green for a reason, because, you know, we know about red, black, and green in our community, right? But centralized is red. We need to stop. There's a lot of things that are happening. You know, no matter what we do, opening our own banks and doing all that stuff is absolutely phenomenal. I'm not saying that it does not need to be done, but at the end of the day, we still report to the people who have historically and traditionally held us and our communities inside of a red line, period. And so we have to go to those entities for everything. But that is what centralization has done for us. So I submit to you, if we continue to do the same things that we've done in the past that haven't gotten us anywhere, we're going to continue to get what we've been getting. So it's time to really start to think and try to figure out, is this something that we need to be doing different? And I'm going to say to you, yes. Cryptocurrency is decentralized, the green. So this is what decentralization looks like. All of us are participating in an ecosystem. We make the terms and services. We say what goes. We say how much it is. We say how it is to be utilized in our community. And I submit to you that Bitcoin is not, and I'm going to say not backed by anything. It is backed by something. It's backed by social construct. This is the first time in history something has been backed by social construct. and it is also distributed. So each and every one of you can get on your computer and take a look at the Bitcoin network, see what it's doing every day. The numbers are the numbers. The science is the science. It does not lie. It is happening, and our community needs to wake up and understand that centralization is not the way for us. It has not worked thus far, and it's not going to work in the future. Things are changing. We have gone digital. That being said, global acceptance. So you may ask, where is Bitcoin being accepted? All over. You can Google Bitcoin Beach. Is a whole community of people that use nothing except Bitcoin. Amsterdam, like there are so many places around the world that are using Bitcoin as an actual currency. The United States is slow. They're coming around, but they're slow to come around because I feel, and this is my opinion, that they have to figure out how to get ahead of this. So we talk bad about it here and let you think that it's only being used by criminals and thieves and all these things, so that they have an opportunity to try to figure out how the world do we get ahead of this. If this gets into the hands of the regular everyday people, then we won't have an opportunity to get those NSF checks, those NSF fees anymore. We won't have an opportunity to charge 22% interest on a car loan. We won't have the opportunity to hold their money and tell them that they have to tell me if it's over $10,000, what they need it for, who they're sending it to, why you're doing this, all of those things. So Bitcoin has become globally accepted. And I'm here to tell you, I'm no history major, but I'm here to tell you that our dollar has been backed for years by fear of war and of us not doing what they want us to do. And so the other parts of the world are starting to say, hey, you got this fiat currency that's not backed by gold. And you guys are printing and printing and printing and printing more money. So there's going to be some ramifications that come behind that. And some people may not say no. But my thing is, we had no idea at the beginning of last year that all of us would be walking around or quarantined in our house, walking around now with masks on. We have no idea what is about to transpire. And just understand, this digital revolution is spreading. It is spreading more than the United States allows us to know. So I just want to share that. So yes, Bitcoin is accepted tons of places. It's accepted right here in the United States. People don't even know. You can go to Starbucks, you can go to GameStop, you can go to Nordstrom's, Macy's. If you go online, you can buy airline tickets. You can buy your goods and services off Amazon. People are accepting Bitcoin, but they've been very quiet about it because they needed to figure out how this is going to really play a role in the monopolies that they've had. So I need you to keep that in mind as we talk about this. So people may say, Bitcoin today, and I'm going to pull it up just so I'm correct right now this second. Bitcoin today is $59,800 for one coin. How in the world do I, as a mother trying to go to college, trying to work, maybe I have a child, maybe I have 2 or 3 children, how do I get involved in this Bitcoin thing if it's $59,000? What I'm telling you is Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto designed it to be divisible enough for all of us regular common folks to participate. So just like there are 100 pennies in a dollar, there are 100 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin. We call it Satoshis, but and as you see there, that's the spelling, Satoshis. There's 100 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin. So how is this going to work? How does this play out, Miss Naja? You might ask me. How this plays out is as digital currency begins to become the norm, you're going to go into your grocery store, and not only are they going to accept Bitcoin, they're going to say to you, that loaf of bread is 4 Satoshis as opposed to $4. So I know this is a long way off, but it is my idea that in our history or in our future, our children's children, I may not see the day, but our children's children, in my opinion, and I used to be a financial advisor working in the financial industry. I live and breathe Bitcoin and cryptocurrency right now, all day, every day. And I am seeing the value that Bitcoin brings. Eventually, a Satoshi will be worth $1. equivalent to $1 so that we understand this conceptually. So eventually, if a Bitcoin is worth $100 million and you start right now stacking Satoshis, because today a Satoshi is less than a penny. A Satoshi is less than a penny. And if we take this $59,000 out of our mind and just start to think, how do I start small? How do I buy a Satoshi or a couple of Satoshis or 1,000,000 Satoshis, which right now is about $600, 1,000,000 Satoshis. Thinking of the analogy I just said, equivalent to $1, maybe in my grandchildren's lives, you have now made them Satoshi millionaires, or you've made yourself a Satoshi millionaire with $600 today. You can start small because it's divisible. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So as we move into this thing, Bitcoin cannot be counterfeited. One of the problems that we have in the United States is our dollar is counterfeited. You go to the store right now, they're even running a $5 bill through a machine to try to see if it's counterfeited. The blockchain technology, again, as I talked about, removes the trust, because if I get ready to send you Bitcoin, there's a verification process that happens on the blockchain, and you can tell right away whether or not I have $5 worth of Bitcoin to send you to purchase this face mask. So that is done on the blockchain. So it prevents any type of counterfeit happening. So that 21 million will only ever be that 21 million. So let's talk about portability. Gold is not portable unless you have gold coins, but you're not taking any gold bullions on a plane. You're not taking a whole truckload of anything anywhere across the US. It's impossible to do for the regular everyday person. But a Bitcoin, you can have Bitcoin or Bitcoins, you can have them in your pocket or on your cell phone and travel anywhere in the world that you want to, and you can cash it out in the currency wherever your destination lies. So just understand, this is an incredible type of thing. I plan on moving to Africa. I don't have to pick up and try to go and sell my gold and do all these things. I just have my Bitcoin. I have my private keys. I get on my plane. I enjoy myself looking like a ragamuffin. When I get to Africa, I just cash out my Bitcoin if that's what I need to do, or I pay for my goods and services. It's that easy. And I can't take the dollar over there, but you can definitely take Bitcoin. So cryptocurrency is the latest stage in the financial evolution. So what does that mean to your family? What does it mean to your family? I'm just going to bring one of my clients, and I call all of my clients my family, but I'm going to bring one of my clients to this presentation so you can understand what this actually means. This is a real person. If you Google her, she wrote a book called, and I'll tell you in a second because I got a lot of stuff going through my mind. Celebrating Me. She wrote a book called Celebrating Me. She's on tour right now because of COVID. It's a little slow, but she came to my cryptocurrency bank, and on April 4th, 2019, Miss Johnny, she actually invested $4,500. Motherboard of the church on a fixed income, was taking a look at her retirement and was saying, I've worked all my life. I've done everything I was told to do. Go to school, get a good education, get a job. I've been an entrepreneur. And here I am in my late 60s, going into, early 70s. And I don't even have the retirement that I deserve. I'm on a fixed income. But what she did was she understood. And again, I'm not convincing anybody to buy Bitcoin. I need you to understand Bitcoin and the business of Bitcoin. So she started to understand Bitcoin, and she said, you know what? I'm going to bank on Bitcoin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you $4,500. She gave us the $4,500. We taught her how to set up her own wallet. Bitcoin is about self-sovereignty. So as you move forward learning and you got anybody telling you to give you their money and they're going to hold your Bitcoin for you, I'm going to tell you that is an absolute no-no. This is self-sovereignty. So what we're teaching is our people to finally take their money and their finances into their hands and change the trajectory of your family. But there is no investment, and I will argue that there is no investment that you could have put $4,500 in on April 4th and done nothing except left it in your wallet, on your cell phone, or in your cold storage. And today I put 58,000 because I did this presentation yesterday. Today she has $59,898 of value in her wallet that she can either bring back to our establishment, and we can cash her out and give her that in fiat if that's what she needs to do, or she can be wherever she is in Texas and find an exchange that will exchange her money out. That is an incredible return for those of us who are trying to figure out, I've worked all my life, got a 401k. By the time they take taxes, it's now a 201k because we didn't understand what these 401ks were exactly because they just started in the late 80s. It was a way for them to get out of having to give us a pension. So they came up with a 401k, but we're seeing the fruit of that with all of our baby boomers. And she's one of those baby boomers, and she's on a fixed income. This is what the possibilities are. The possibilities are that you just get a little bit of an education and start to understand. But as you understand, you don't have to do $4,500. You could do $4.50, but you need to start today and start to understand the business of Bitcoin because it's real, it's happening. This is not fake. This is not a scam. This is not all of the things that you've heard. And I will let you know that what I'm saying to you is not to take all of your equity out of your house or go and take out a loan. That is not what I'm saying. I am saying that we as a people need to add cryptocurrency to our current portfolio to do what we always hear people say, diversify your assets, right? You may have a 401k, an IRA, you may have savings in the bank. The bank is giving you 0.05%. So if you did an experiment like we did, put $100,000 in the bank on a January 1st and take it out on a December 31st, you get a hot whopping $5. Why would you leave your money in a place that makes 22% giving out a loan or 14% giving out a loan, or to those of us who don't have the best credit that maybe can't even get into a loan, they deny us a loan? Why would you leave your money there to hold it for them to utilize when it's doing absolutely nothing? There, you may have a money market account. You can have CDs, stocks, bonds, real estate. And I submit to you today, real estate is fabulous. But Bitcoin acts in the same way. And so I'm going to wrap it up so we can take some questions. But Bitcoin acts the same way real estate does. Let's just say today you decide, okay, I'm going to go out. I have $600 and buy 1,000,000 Satoshis. That's 1,000,000 Satoshis in Bitcoin. So let's say you decide to do that today. And it's just like buying a house. 1,000,000 Satoshis, you bought a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. And I'm not saying do either of, I'm just giving you an illustration. So you buy this house, you're in a neighborhood, they decide that they're going to make the neighborhood nicer. So you buy it for $100,000, they're building parks. The people next door to you are renovating, they move in, they make it beautiful. They get rid of the crime element because of the things that they do. And now that $100,000 house is worth, and you haven't done anything, it's now worth $150,000. Why is that? You didn't add any bedrooms or bath. The value just changed. So you didn't lose or gain any more amount of house. You just have that same 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, but the neighborhood is different. So the value changes. So you take that same house for $100,000 and you're in a neighborhood that people are in a red line and they don't allow you to get the loans you need to fix up your property. The crime rate goes up because of the things that are happening. People are desperate for money, right? So what happens then is the property value drops. You don't have any less of a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, but the value has changed. Bitcoin is the exact same thing. Whatever money you invest, you still have those Satoshis, but the difference is it's volatile. The price goes up, the price goes down, the price goes up, the price goes down, but you still hold those million Satoshis. And unless you sell them, that is the only way you're going to lose in Bitcoin, because as I stated, and you can fact check, it's done 200% returns over the course of its lifespan in 12 years. So Bitcoin, you will have it if you hold it and do not sell it. So we are talking about playing chess. This is a long-term strategy. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. That is what we're doing to add to our portfolios. So it can absolutely save your portfolio if you start to understand how this technology works. All right, so how do you get started today? And this is the end of my presentation. We are teaching our community to do what's called dollar cost average. So what you need to do is, as a financial advisor, and I'll stop in my thought, as a financial advisor, I would always talk to people. What can you afford to put away in the event that there's a major emergency and you have at least 3 to 6 months savings in an account somewhere marked emergency fund? But what can you afford to put away? Rain, sleet, or snow, that if there's a huge catastrophe, this amount of money won't hurt you. Most people will come up with a number. So I'll just say a family would say $300. So what I would suggest in the old money world is that you don't take that entire 300. Maybe you take 150 so that we know it's comfortable, because a lot of people have a lot of thoughts about what they think is comfortable, and then it winds up not being that, and then they have to go back in and try to pull that money. So I usually would typically go half of that. So what I'm saying to you today is come up in your mind with a number that works for you, that you can possibly invest in Bitcoin. And then you say to yourself, okay, I'm not going to do that whole amount. I'll do half of that amount. And then I'll begin to dollar cost average my way into Bitcoin. Because today Bitcoin is 59, but Sunday it was 54. Tomorrow, hopefully it'll be, and I say I hope it's lower, because I hope it's lower so that our community can participate a little bit more, because the less Bitcoin costs, the more Satoshis you can buy. But come up with that number. And if it's $10, if it's $20, if it's $100, you say, okay, every time I get paid, I'm going to put $20 in Bitcoin. I'm going to buy $20 worth of Satoshis, $20 worth of Satoshis. And as it goes up and down, because you're dollar cost averaging, you're participating all the way across the board. And when you look up, you'll have that million Satoshis at $600, because you've done 20, 20, 20, 100, 20, 20, 20. You'll have that million Satoshis. And then when you get that million Satoshis, you tuck it away, and then you go for your next million Satoshis, and you tuck it away. And remember, there are 100 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin, but we've got to start to play chess and help our community understand how you participate in an asset that's already at $60,000. So you benefit from the highs and the lows. If anybody needs a Bitcoin starter kit, I can, I don't know if somebody can type this in the chat, what's on the bottom of the screen, but I do have a Bitcoin starter kit that'll help you start to understand the difference in the wallets and all of those things, which is the education that we teach our community. But I'm going to say this. I heard from the onset that the sponsor was Morgan Stanley. And I say thank you to Morgan Stanley. Coincidentally, Morgan Stanley yesterday, if you Google it, you'll see that they made an announcement that they are now allowing, and get that word, allowing their agents to talk to their high net worth clients about possibly putting Bitcoin in their portfolio. So I'm going to submit to you that you don't have to be a high net worth individual to actually participate in Bitcoin. And I am tasking Morgan Stanley with not just helping their wealthy clients, but helping our community, because we're here. We need the education. We need to understand that you now understand, to give to your high net worth clients. So with that, we're educating our community, and to our community, we say, let us help you on this journey, because it's not going anywhere. It is getting bigger and bigger. As you all may have not known, Susie Orman told all of her followers the Saturday before last to at least put $100 a month in Bitcoin. The word is spreading in their community. Help us spread it in ours. We're here. We are the first Black-owned Bitcoin bank in the nation. We are actually a brick and mortar. We look to have these locations across the US. Our name is Crypto Blockchain Plug, and that's it for me. I'm Naja Roberts. I'm passionate about my community, and I am passionate about my community making a change. And we cannot do it doing what we do, and that's doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. Peace and blessings. The floor is open for questions.
Thank you, Naja, for that powerful, powerful presentation. We don't have time for questions at the moment, but I want people to put their questions in the chat box so that we can get those questions out to you and get a response that I can share with the rest of our conference attendees. Right now, we have another panel coming up, and it is on the transferring of wealth for financial security, the upside of estate planning, wills, long-term care, and life insurance. And I asked my colleague, my committee member, Beverly Davis, to bring forward her people for this particular segment of our presentation of the conference. Thank you.
You're muted, Ms. Davis. You're muted. You're muted.
Okay, thank you. This is such a great conference that we're having. So much information, so much important information that we all are sharing. It is my pleasure to introduce Lola Waterman and Vicki Fraser. Lola, you want to start by introducing yourself to us, please?
Of course. Good afternoon, everyone. I hear an echo. Do you guys hear an echo? Yes? I'm not sure if it's coming from.
No, you're good.
I'm good? Okay. All right. So my name is Lola Waterman. I am a principal law clerk to a Supreme Court justice here in Brooklyn. And the judge that I work for sits in the guardianship part of the Supreme Court. And for those that don't know, guardianship cases are basically where a petitioner comes to the court and asks that the court appoint someone to step into the shoes of another person to make decisions for them because that person has lost capacity. So that's what I deal with on a daily basis. While in court as the principal law clerk, I get to see effects of people not planning their estates, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about some of those things later on. I also, my spare time, which is not often, but I serve as an arbitrator in small claims court. That means that if you sue someone for $25,000 or less and you come to court, you don't want to wait around for 2 to 3 hours to see a judge. You can come and see me, I hear the case, and I decide the case. And before that, I was in private practice where I had my own business, and I specialized in estate planning, in Medicaid planning, anything elder law. And I also spoke at churches and libraries, at senior centers, senior residences, always with the goal to educate on estate planning and getting your house in order. And, you know, personally, I'm a mom, I'm married to a pastor. I'm running for civil court judge here in Kings County. So please look out for me on the campaign trail. And for anyone who's interested, we're looking for motivated and hardworking individuals to participate in the campaign. So look me up on lolawaterman.com. And thank you for this opportunity. You're on mute. Ms. Davis, you're muted.
Yes. Thank you so much, Lola, for your introduction. Now we will go on to Vicki Fraser. Vicki, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure, absolutely. Sure, absolutely. My name is Vicki Fraser Williams. Once I married Michael, I added that Williams there. My background is for 20 years, I was a television reporter here in South Florida. Thus my background, I thought I'd give you all some of our South Florida sunshine and trees. After that, I did charter schools. I was building and running charter schools around the country. I was involved in about 70 of those. And in my last stretch, I like to say, a legacy counseling person, financial planner. And I believe it is the most important work that I have done and will do while I'm here. I am married. I primarily work through New York Life Insurance Company, have my own company, which is Fraser Williams Financial, that I own with my husband. And we like to say that your family legacy is our family business. I will say in short order that I actually believe that God has appointed me to do this work at this point in my life. In the last 6 years, I've lost 6 of my family members, beginning with my father and followed 14 months after that by my mother. But I have come to learn, understand, see, feel, and believe that they not only believed, but they lived that scripture in Proverbs 13 and 22 that says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And today, I believe it's my job to help more in our community really understand that the planning is important and it is up to you to do it. So that's what I'm doing these days.
So we had one of our students, she asked some really important questions. So I'm going to pose it to you. It was by Sharifa. She gave me some really good questions that she would like to be answered. So one of the questions she had, Lola, I'm going to start with you first. What is estate planning and what does it entail?
That's a great question. So the definition of estate planning is the process of anticipating. I think I got muted there. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So estate planning is the process of anticipating during a person's lifetime for the management and disposal of that person's estate during their lifetime. So I'll just give an example. We have John. John is a 19-year-old. He just started college. You know, who makes a decision for John if John were to get incapacitated? Who makes the end of life decisions for him? So the way I like to explain it to people is it's 2 different categories when we're talking about estate planning. There's estate planning for incapacity, and then there's estate planning for end of life decisions. So how do we define incapacity? Incapacity is anything that mentally prevents you from acting as yourself. So whether you are in a coma, whether it's a mental illness, whether it's dementia or Alzheimer's, anything that prevents you from thinking as an objective person is what we define as incapacity. And if you were to become incapacitated, the question is, who gets to step into your shoes to make decisions for you? So the types of decisions that need to be made are further divided into 2 parts. We have the financial part and we have the medical needs part. The financial part, the documents that you could use for estate planning in that category includes the power of attorney. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the power of attorney, right? So what's the power of attorney? It's basically a legal document where you're appointing another person to make financial decisions on your behalf. So God forbid someone ends up in the hospital and they're in a coma, but rent still has to be paid. The bills still need to be paid. Who is doing those things? Only the power of attorney agent can do those things. Your daughter can't go into the bank and ask for money without a power of attorney document in her possession. So a power of attorney does that. You can also do joint assets. So if I had real estate, real property here in Brooklyn, and once again, I'm in a hospital, I can't manage my financial affairs. Now, if I've added my sister onto my deed, my sister can make certain decisions for me, right? If my sister was on my bank account, my sister can make certain decisions for me. She can go to Chase, any of those banks, and withdraw money because she's added on onto my bank account. So that's estate planning for incapacity in the financial realm. As it pertains to healthcare, we have estate planning documents such as a healthcare proxy, we have a do not resuscitate, and we also have a living will, which is different from a will, right? So New York makes a distinction between a will, which we'll discuss later, and a living will. A living will is basically a legal document where you write certain instructions to your healthcare proxy agent, right? And your healthcare proxy is you're appointing someone to make medical decisions on your behalf in the event that you're unable to make those decisions. You can get very specific as to the instructions in a living will. So basically, these are the kinds of medication that I want and I don't want. This is what I want you to do, in this particular circumstance. So the living will details everything, every instruction that you're given to your healthcare proxy. So that covers estate planning for incapacity. The other part is what people talk about most often, and that's end of life decisions. What happens to your estate when you pass? That's where the will comes in. The will, again, is a legal document where you're appointing an executor that would distribute your assets upon your death. And you're also designating beneficiaries who inherits from your estate. So that's a will. We also have a trust. The way I explain a trust, it's like a basket, and anything that can be titled or deeded can go into the basket. So your bank accounts can hypothetically go into a trust. Your real estate can go into your trust. Your insurance policies can go into your trust. So anything that you can change the ownership of or deed in any kind of way can go into a trust. A trust gives you greater protection than a will. Now, unlike a will, you have to go to probate court to probate your will. A trust, you do not have to go to surrogate court to probate your trust. And a lot of celebrities use the trust because the contents of the trust remain private, right? It never becomes public information. Your will, on the other hand, becomes public information once it's filed in surrogate court. So, in summary, estate planning is divided into two parts: estate planning for incapacity and estate planning for end of life decisions. And I know that was the long answer to your question, but I hope I covered it.
Well, so just to ask, just to say it again, so in terms of our students who may feel that he doesn't have any assets, is that applicable too? So say if Johnny, who's 19, died and he doesn't have a checking or bank account, or let's say a student who's maybe a student who may have one child. Mm-hmm. Is what you just said, mm-hmm. Is that applicable? What happens? I mean, she may feel that she has no money. You're talking about estate planning, you're talking about trust. And if they feel there's no money around for all of those things, is that applicable also?
Well, absolutely. And that's when I was in private practice. That was the number one.
Do you have something else on? Maybe your telephone or so also, because you're coming in and out.
No, I don't. Just my computer.
Okay.
Just my computer. But I think if you mute yourself, then I'll be fine. I'll be fine. There we go. Do we hear the echo? We're good? Okay. So, generally speaking, estate planning is for anyone who is 18 or over. At the time you turn 18, your parents can no longer make any decisions for you, right? That's what we all look forward to at the age of 18. So for example, if you turn 18, you go off to college and your parent needs to go to a doctor to get your immunization records, they can't get it if you don't have a healthcare proxy in place, right? So estate planning is for anyone who is an adult. Now, when I was in private practice and I would go to this different places, whether it's a church or a senior residence, them saying that I don't have any assets, so why should I? is a common thing that we hear every single day. It's not just for students, it's for even working people who are not able to save any money because they're living from paycheck to paycheck. So the question is, if you don't have any assets, does it make sense to still plan? And the answer is a resounding yes. For reasons I just discussed, there's estate planning for incapacity. Incapacity does not care about how much money you have in the bank, right? In the court system, we get to see people that have no income, to people who just are getting Social Security income, to people who are wealthy. So it doesn't matter what your financial circumstances are, estate planning for incapacity is important, right? Now, estate planning for after life, if the question is it important if I have no assets? And the answer again is yes. I had cases where I was representing estates where the person didn't have any money while they were alive. But in one particular instance, the gentleman, he was 50, crossing the street, gets hit by a car, right? And dies as a result thereof. Now, his family had to bring a lawsuit against the person who hit him, and they ended up settling for a decent amount. The question is, where did that money go? He didn't have a will, right? Because like most of us, he was thinking, what's the importance of a will? But the problem that he caused in that case was that his next of kin was a daughter that was born out of wedlock, right? And there was no, his name was not on her birth certificate. So the question is, could she get the money? And it was really hard. You know, the money ended up going to the public administrator in that particular case because there was no proof that that was her father. Right now, had he written a general will, it didn't even have to be anything, you know, elaborate, but just if I come into any money whatsoever, it's going to go to my daughter. That would have helped solve all the issues. And we were in court for years on this case, right? So the public administrator ended up getting that case, the money, because the daughter could never prove that she was in fact his daughter. So it's important to understand that estate planning, for anyone who's over 18, you never know. It's kind of like an insurance policy. If I do come into money, this is who I want it to go to. And there are many resources out there that help you to plan your estate and have a will or other estate planning documents for free.
So Lola, thank you. And talking about insurance, now I will go to ask Vicki. Vicki, what type of insurance is best for the different stages of life for a freshman student, alumni, an older student, a professor? What type of insurance would you recommend?
You know, Beverly, if you don't mind, back up and tack on to Lola for a minute. I think it's really important in our community, first of all, that we not let the word estate stump us. She alluded to this when she said, so many times people say, well, I don't have anything, you know, I don't have anything to plan for in terms of an estate. I don't have an estate. You couldn't be more wrong than that in that area. I say to people all the time, I think I said to you on the phone the other day, up and die. And you'll see how much people will find the things that you own to be important. So if you worked hard to get it in the first place, then, you know, take the time to let it be known or to determine who gets what. I mean, it could be as simple as a piece of art or an old photograph. It is up to you to plan to say, this is what I want to go here, there, and the other place. So many of us know there are many celebrities who have died without having done that. You know, coming to mind very quickly is Prince and Aretha, right? It turned out that more of Prince's brothers and sisters that he didn't know and didn't even talk to would have a stake in his money because he didn't say, I want this to go here or the other place. So don't take that for granted. As it relates to young people, to students, look, the greatest thing we could be doing for you right now as it relates to estate planning is to give you knowledge, is to help you understand that you may not have XYZ today, right? But we know that's not the future. You're going to have it. So the knowledge of the fact that you need to put something in writing is critically important. I used to say to my mom and dad every New Year's Eve, well, we would usually have New Year's morning together, breakfast. And they would always talk about what they wanted to have happen, etc. But I was the only one of 5 children who might have been there that time. And I told my mom and dad, you know what? I know what you want. You've told me over and over, but let me tell you, I'm not going to fight with my sisters and my brother. I'm not going to do it. So you know what I need you to do is to write it down. Now I will fight with them over what you wrote, but I'm not going to try to convince them that you told me X, Y, Z. So I know that was kind of piggybacking on Lola, but that is kind of, I've lived it. You know, I was at a funeral, a homegoing this weekend, and a fight broke out at the funeral, right? I mean, people, the church dumped out, and I have never seen more discord than during, you know, somebody leaving. Let's go now real quick to life insurance. I think young people many times might think, I don't need life insurance because I'm too young. I don't have any children. That is one of the biggest fallacies, and older people will say things like, all I need is enough to put me in the ground. Let me say this to you all, everybody who hears me. The reality is other communities of color, other communities, not of color, have been using life insurance to build wealth for hundreds of years. So the primary purpose of life insurance is to provide protection in the event of an unexpected, untimely death, but that's not its only job, let's say. I mentioned earlier about my father and mother believing in leaving an inheritance. Well, that is what a life insurance policy will do if you get the right kind. Now, if you're a young person, a term insurance is a temporary. You can only buy that typically for 10 and 20-year periods because it is temporary. So if you're a young college student and you don't have children, typically that is a policy that someone else would, either your mom or dad might take out on you, or if you have children, a child, and something happens to you, you've got to remember, if something happens to you, is there someone depending upon you? Without you, then they would be at a great disadvantage, either in a monetary situation or their home situation. So a term policy is temporary. It is typically the least expensive you can get. I could probably cover a college student at $500,000 for about 20 bucks. It's really inexpensive. The point is to get it done. And typically that will lock in your insurability. It will lock in that you are healthy and you're young, because life insurance, as you get older, 2 things happen. It becomes more expensive because it's older and you're older and it's a greater risk. But secondly, there's no guarantee that you will be healthy. And so the older you are, and the less healthy you are.
Vicki, so how long, say if I as a student buy a life insurance today, and in 6 months something happened to me, is that life insurance in effect?
First of all, Beverly, I'm so glad you asked that, because you're watching TV and people are having ads out that say you can get covered for $9.95 a month. Look, everything about life insurance is important to know who you're doing, just like with an advisor, who you're doing business with, okay? If you, with us, literally the moment I take your application and put it through, you are covered. If something happened to you 5 minutes, even before I get back to my office, you're covered, and we would pay that full amount of your death benefit. Now, there are other companies out there that you've got to live for 2 years before you can get back what the face amount of that policy is, or you have to, if not, they will return how much you've paid, plus maybe 10% on that. So if you paid 1 month's thing, like I just said, at $20, 1 month's premium, and you died within a month or a week, we'll pay you that 1 month's, not we, that company would pay you that month's premium and 10%. So it's important to know where you are investing your life insurance policy with.
Thank you for that. Lola, you answered a lot of the questions. You covered a lot of the questions I would have asked. So I'm going to ask, how legal is a homemade will? And say if you have, if I live in New York and I have some property or some homes that someone left me in another state, how is that affected in terms of the surrogate courts or in terms of estate planning?
Thank you for that question. That's a great question.
That's a great question.
So, although lawyers are awesome people, it's not imperative that you have one to draft a will. A homemade will is something I would call a do-it-yourself will. And there's several websites out there that people can get on to get more, this do-it-yourself wills done. There's a word of caution though. In New York State, there are several things that certain requirements that have to be observed in order for you to have the proper execution of your will. So if you don't follow each and every one of those requirements, if your will ever shows up in court, the court wouldn't have any other choice but to throw out that will. So it's important for you to follow those requirements. They're non-negotiable. And so one of them exactly is that you have to be 18 or over, right? And you have to be of sound mind. And sound mind is really a legal definition, right? So someone can have dementia, but still be able to execute a will. As long as you know what your estate is and you know who you would like to benefit from your estate, the law considers that you have a sound mind to execute the will. You also have to be able to sign it. You have to be able to attest to whomever your witnesses are that it is your will. And you have to have a minimum of 2 witnesses to see you sign the document. So even if it's a homemade will,
does it mean that it has to be notarized? Are you saying that it should be notarized?
Yes, it should be notarized and attested and witnessed, right? So all of those things have to happen. So usually when I was in private practice, I was the lawyer, but I was also the notary, right? So I would have my client attest to the witnesses, 2 witnesses that are not benefiting from the will, and I notarize everyone's signature, okay? So, and then in New York, it's also important to point out that New York does not accept oral wills. Back in the day when we used to watch the Westerns, there was a gentleman on horseback and, riding down the fields, and then he gets an arrow to his chest. And, as he's dying, he declares that he wants to leave all these assets to Annie Mae, right? We used to observe that back in the day. Now, New York courts don't accept oral wills. It has to be in writing, right? And then I know sometimes people have questions about whether or not they can handwrite their will. Again, New York only accepts handwritten wills under very limited circumstances. So the best bet is to have it typed up and make sure that you're following all the requirements in New York State to make it valid.
I would like to ask a question about that.
Yes.
If you have a will in the New York State and the state surrogate court, depending on if you even wrote up the will and have everybody's name who you want certain percentage of that estate to go to, and other members say that they are family members, they have the right to appeal that court and appeal that will, and then it goes into surrogate court and all that stuff. Is there a way that you can have your will made up in a state that will not make that happen, so that what you wrote in your sound mind will be followed through instead of holding it up in court with all this probate business?
So let me just repeat the question so I'm sure I understand. Is there anything you can put in your will to prevent anyone from contesting it? Is that what you mean?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. So in New York, you can include a no contest clause in your will. Basically, if I have 3 kids or I have 3 siblings, I can say, listen, I'm giving $20 to you, I'm giving $10 to you, and I'm giving $5 to person 3. If person 3 contest my will, they don't get anything from my will. their $5 goes to the other people, right? So you can put a no contest clause in your will. Now, they can still challenge it and say, hey, listen, Ms. So-and-so didn't have the capacity when she drafted this will. And the court has to hear that. And they have to prove, it's their burden of proof to show to the court that you didn't have capacity at the time the will was executed.
I would have to interrupt us now because we're going into another session, but perhaps the person who did ask the questions, if there are any more questions, Lola, are you going to be around just for a short period of time?
Sure, I can stay.
Okay, so if you can put your questions in the chat to Lola, she'll be able to answer those questions. And just to let you know that Vicky will be, she'll be back around at 4 o'clock. And so if there are any questions that you may have for her, you'll have a whole segment and have her all to yourself. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Can I make a comment?
Go right ahead.
This is Rowan Fenelon. I'm a Medgar
You have an echo, Rowan.
alumni.
Or 1 second. Go ahead, Rowan.
Yeah, this is Rowan Fenelon, Medgar alumni 2019. This session is so powerful. I think we ought to have some program to teach stuff like this at Medgar Evers, because as I left Medgar, I knew nothing of these subjects. As I left, within the year I left, I got introduced to a group where I learned a lot of these things. And I think it's very important because it helps to empower us as people of minorities, brown and black color, empower us for making better decisions after college and with our lives. So that's the comment. I have questions, but I'll put it in the chat for Lola. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. So I'd like to bring up our next panel, which will be on the community development, redefining gentrification. I'd like to bring up my colleague, my committee member, LaShawn Muhammad, to introduce her panel. And LaShawn, welcome. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Raquel. Good afternoon, everyone. And hello again to those who were on with us earlier. I would like to bring on the panel and ask the panelists to please turn on their cameras. Valerie White, Executive Director of LISC. Erica Keller, President of Brisa Builders Corporation. Nia Rock, Vice President, she's back with us again, Vice President, Bank United. And Dion Grayman, co-founder of We Run Brownsville. Can you all please turn on your cameras and formally join today's panel discussion. So today's, as Raquel stated, today's panel discussion is, the topic is redefining gentrification, a grassroots approach to community development. And, you know, we're gonna center the conversation around the idea of redefining gentrification, regentrification and what it could mean for local communities, you know, as opposed to the current narrative. For most people, gentrification signals the replacement of indigent residents of a community with more affluent residents, meaning, you know, poor people being replaced, well, poor Black and brown people being replaced by other communities, you know, with higher incomes. That's what, when you hear gentrification, that's what it signals for most people. But it doesn't have to be that way. And so, you know, this doesn't have to be the case. And for today's discussion, we'll explain why and how we collectively can redefine gentrification for Black and brown communities and create a solid ecosystem through community development. Ladies, I'm not seeing you on the screen. So I hope that you all were able to connect. Can you unmute yourselves?
Yes. Hi, LaShawn, it's Valerie.
Hi.
I'm here. I can see myself on the screen. So
Okay, I see you too. Hi, Valerie.
Hey. Hey, girl.
Okay, do we have Dion Grayman?
I'm here.
Hi, Dion. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. And Erica?
Good afternoon. I'm here. Can you see?
Okay, great. All right. Hey, Erica. And Nia. Is Nia Rock on with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Everyone's here. Okay, so I'm going to ask each of you. A question, and when you answer the question, you can also, if you can also please provide some background and introduce the audience to who you are and the phenomenal women that you are. So Valerie, I'm going to ask you the first question. Please describe your work at LISC and your purpose and role within community development, and also include the challenges which
get in
need
contact with
greater
the
impact.
pathology to follow up on having my pathology slides being sent to my surgeon.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon. Valerie White, very pleased to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I am Executive Director of LISC New York City. LISC is the Local Initiative Support Corporation. We are a national nonprofit and we are an intermediary. And what that basically means is that we get investment of capital through philanthropic sources, banks, and other foundations to invest capital in underserved, underrepresented communities who have been disinvested historically. And we color everything that we do through the lens of closing the racial wealth gap, closing the economic wealth gap, and ensuring that we are moving to a place of equity in the communities that we work. At LISC New York City, we do that in a number of ways. Each of the 36 markets across the country have different challenges because different cities have different challenges. But in New York, we do a number of things, and that includes provide lending for affordable housing and community infrastructure. We provide grants to local nonprofits to do the work in workforce development, financial mobility, health equity. And then we also have a economic development platform, which basically over the last year has been focused on building back or providing support to small minority-owned businesses in the communities that we work, supporting those commercial corridors, which of course we know are the anchors of our neighborhoods. They provide the jobs, the culture, the strength, the foundation for survival of our neighborhoods. It's been a little bit challenging, I guess, as an understatement, given the last year. Not only are we providing these services to these neighborhoods, we're doing it in the face of a pandemic, which has basically really pulled the curtain back on the inequities that our communities suffer on a regular basis. So in order to ensure that we are working to help infuse that capital, both financial capital and human capital, technical support capital, we are working through the nonprofits who are working to identify businesses, to assist them with long-term sustainability and viability strategic planning. So we were able to provide grants through our New York Relief and Recovery Fund to 112 businesses across the boroughs. We work with 16 nonprofits that are located in these particular neighborhoods, and they are working with the businesses on the long term to help them develop those sustainability skill sets, and then moving toward providing additional services and technical assistance, back office support, marketing, accounting, all the things needed to build a strong business foundation, and then moving those businesses to what long-term viability will be after COVID. Of course, we don't know what that is, but we want to be sure that we're providing that additional support. The one thing, again, and I hope this is the time I'm supposed to bring this up, and I'm gonna bring it up anyway. LaShawn, I hope it's okay. Our program is called the Relief and Recovery Program, and I've talked a lot about the word recovery in general means get back to where you were after something happens. But we submit at LISC that we don't want to get back to where we were because things were tenuous at best for our communities. We want to get to a place of equity. So we're working to be sure that we're partnering with you, members of the community, with other people in the financial institutions. Nia's on this board. She's a supporter of LISC, with community-based organizations, elected officials, government, officials, to be sure that we get to the place where communities should have been in the first place, and that's to a place of equity. So I'll stop there, thank you for having me.
Thank you. No, that was perfect, Valerie. Thank you very much for that. And so following Valerie, and so I just also want to frame, just who we, who everyone represents or what we represent on this panel, right? So LISC is an intermediary funder, right? Nia Rock represents Bank United, also a funder. Erica Keller is a developer who utilizes funding to develop real estate, right? And then Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation, we are a nonprofit organization that facilitates the work based upon the funding. And then also like we run Brownsville. So I just also wanted to put into perspective that we are literally our own ecosystem, literally on this panel. So I just wanted to highlight that. Nia, can you please, same question to you. Please describe your work at Bank United and your role in community development, and also please include challenges.
Thank you for having me back. And I'm really grateful to be part of this conversation as well as the earlier conversation. As a community development professional and also working in the environment of the Community Reinvestment Act roles and responsibilities at Bank United, my work is to, my specific work ongoing is to do two things, is to monitor and engage employees of the bank and activities, board commitments, and so forth, ways that they can enrich local communities, and particularly low and moderate income communities. And also as a representative of the bank's corporate giving, community development giving of the organization. My role is to identify nonprofit organizations. LISC is an intermediary, as you mentioned, that can deploy assets to local communities to serve the challenges of community. For instance, as Valerie mentioned, as a funder to LISC, the funds are deployed with the full knowledge that LISC is greatly capable of knowing what those challenges are. So banks are not in the business of determining how money should be spent, first of all, within local communities. It is the responsibility of the bank to, under the Community Reinvestment Act, to invest dollars in communities where the community has defined what their needs are. And so sometimes those needs are addressed through intermediary organizations that can actually cover a swath of needs. Valerie mentioned affordable housing, small business development, and economic development and enrichment for communities. Banks also invest directly in other nonprofits that are serving a particular area of community need, such as the needs that are recognized in Brownsville and East New York around housing and so forth. So that's the work that I do. It's also, I also implement my work through my board commitments and identify or support nonprofit organizations through my board work. And that's some of the volunteer work that I referred to earlier, that really identify and focus very strategically on the various areas of communities that are in most need of support. So, it's kind of a broad brush, but that is what community development work is from the bank's perspective. It is supporting the addressing some of the needs of local communities through investment, through lending services, providing services such as volunteer services, et cetera, and other types of services, and investment through grants and direct project-related investments and so forth. And banks have this responsibility. It's a statutory responsibility under CRA, and it has been banks in the past, as we discussed, in other conversations, that created redlining, which disinvested, where they disinvested from local communities. So the work that I do is to close those gaps, be consistent with the regulation that requires banks no longer to disinvest, even though we do see it, and I'll have that, we could talk a little bit more about that in a while, but also just to ensure that deposits that are drawn from communities are invested in those same communities. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nia. Erica, same question.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erica Keller. I am the CEO and chair of Brisa Builders Corporation, which is a second generation family owned minority women business enterprise based out of Brooklyn. We can define ourselves as general contractors and construction managers. I am also the managing member of Brisa Builders Development LLC, which is an organization that I started in 2016 as an offshoot of Brisa Builders Corp. And that organization is focused primarily on the development of affordable housing in New York City and other urban areas on the northeast coast of the United States. And we primarily work with faith-based organizations, although that is not our portfolio any longer solely, but we have a 20-year plus history of working with faith-based organizations to develop affordable housing using the tax credit program, the low-income housing tax credit program, and the HUD 202 program, which is a program that supported senior housing in the 90s and 80s, and that program has since sunset. But we work now with the local city agencies as well as the state to provide affordable housing under the CRA Investment Act. And so we are very local based. We are very grassroots in defining ourselves as a developer, which is sometimes unusual in today's market. And so we are very connected with the community and want to ensure that there is a level of affordability that continues to exist in the New York City area, as well as other urban areas in the Northeast section of the United States. However, most recently, I would say that we are beginning to really think deeply about the work that we do, think about these words that are thrown around most recently, like gentrification, and what the Community Reinvestment Act meant back in 1977 when it was first enacted, and how it changed and grew in 1995, and where we are today in 2021 with a new enactment of that Community Reinvestment Act. And for those of you who do not know, Community Reinvestment, CRA, is really an investment in lower income families in inner cities primarily by large corporations in the United States. And instead of they put equity, they put money into all of these affordable housing projects that you see. And in return for that equity, they get tax credits. And so most of the affordable housing that you see happening is tax credit investment, as well as subsidies from the city agencies to provide a lower level of affordability for those residents. And, we are really beginning to reflect on what does that mean and how is that possibly in antithesis to the disparities that we have most recently been faced with wholeheartedly due to the COVID-19 pandemic, right? So we all know that racism and all of those entities, or all of those feelings, all of that history has continued to cause disparities. And we look at affordable housing as something positive, However, as a local developer, we're analyzing, is this model continuing to perpetuate those disparities? And we're really thinking hard about what are the solutions to that and how do we ensure that we rally for the work that we do to be more meaningful and to get us to a place where we are addressing those disparities. So, you know, most of our projects are for lower income, 60% AMI and below, which is good. We want to ensure that, you know, there is affordable housing in New York City and other high, you know, high real estate areas, San Francisco, of course, Chicago. However, how do we ensure that moderate and middle income people of color are able to also access affordable housing? And I think there needs to be really a deep look at the Community Reinvestment Act and how do we reenact that act, even as they're going through this transitional phase now of the new Act of 2020, how do we look at that in ways to ensure that we are being strategic about eliminating disparities and not just creating clusters of low income where you have to maintain that income in order to maintain your apartment, which is an antithesis to economic growth. And how do we, you know, look at affordable housing to ensure that we're not only just providing affordable housing, but that we're providing all of the ancillary services and opportunities that are in alignment with that. So low income housing tax credits support housing. And there's credits like what they refer to as new market tax credits, which support economic development and small businesses and cultural arts. However, as a developer, there is usually literally brain drain that is created in order to try to make those different programs work, because in isolation, they're almost in antithesis to one another. So where you want to ideally build housing that is affordable and accessible and have, you know, cultural arts support that, as well as economic opportunities through jobs and light manufacturing and commercial retail, it's almost impossible to make those economic programs work. And we work with organizations like LISC. LISC has helped us to secure properties through and to pre-develop those properties through different funding sources. And although we have not worked directly with Bank United, Nia, we have to connect. We work with banks like Bank United to provide the debt financing to actually build those buildings, and you know the equity they've helped to facilitate in many instances, the equity from the tax credit investors. But we have to, as a team, and as LaShawn pointed out, this panel is an example of the entire ecosystem. And so from the lending to the intermediary support services to the developer to the community programs, we have to think about how do we create opportunities to really empower people of color through this legislation that exists, but that is still perpetuating some of the disparities that continue to exist. So we, you know, again, as developers, we do have a mission, we do have a mantra. We believe in the community. We want to ensure that there is affordability, that you don't have this secular pattern of gentrification, which, you know, I think I love LaShawn. She is so idealistic and believing. I don't know if we can really turn that word around, right? Because it means what it means, and it's meant that for 150 years. That people, you know, are pushed out of a neighborhood because there is this created, purposeful cycle of creating ghettos. And then once the land value has gone down, people of middle class go back to those areas, and the people who were there when it was in a depressed state are then pushed out. And that is a purposeful cycle that has been created since the Industrial Revolution in the United States, and cities across the United States, and Black and brown people have always been receiving the short end of that cycle. And I think, like any other bad pattern, we have to stop it. And we have to think, how do we grab the opportunities that are available to us from the government and use them in ways that will empower us. And so, you know, that's my mantra. That's what I am realizing, that I don't want to be a part of a bad cycle. I want to be a part of a positive cycle, and having that conversation in any ways possible. And I think LaShawn and Medgar Evers of inviting Brisa to be a part of this conversation so that we can share, you know, what we believe to be the path forward.
Thank you so much, Erica, for that. And, you know, I just want to acknowledge your work and your approach to this work, because you're not the typical developer. And I think anybody who's ever met you and worked with you knows that. But so your mantra is a perfect segue to Ms. Dion Grayman. And just to answer your question about my idealism around this redefining. So I'm from Brownsville, born and raised, right? And so we have our motto, never ran, never will. And so there's, you know, just based on our motto, so we're not leaving, right? And so I'll pass the baton to my sister, Dion Grayman, co-founder of We Run Brownsville. Same question.
So thank you for this incredible panel. So I'm just noting that, as usual, Black women in this discussion, leading this conversation, because Black women, and that's a whole sentence. So I am third generation Brownsvillian. So not only am I born and raised in Brownsville, but I'm the third generation and raising the fourth here. When my grandparents moved from South, and my grandfather came back from World War II, they moved to Brownsville. And so I'm third generation. I am Dion Grayman, co-founder of We Run Brownsville. And we started in 2015 with the idea that if we convened a space that was both brave and liberated for Black and Brown women to come to learn how to run and finish a 5K race, that we would have in community leadership, right? Because once you can run 3.1 miles, you can do anything. And so our organization started with that in mind, that we wanted to cultivate leadership and strengthen existing advocacy skills for Black and Brown women in the neighborhood to be able to be the decision makers at the tables that they decided needed to be set. And so our work is grounded in community development. We are literally developing community members to activate their leadership and advocacy and service to Brownsville. And so following Erica and thinking about like the elements of a healthy community, we start with the people, right? So we want people to be healthy. We want our spaces to be vibrant. We want like robust and active retail corridors. We want community, we want small businesses owned by community members, right? We want access to culture and arts and restaurants and theaters, right? In community. All of the things that mark a vibrant community, which Brownsville has been deprived of, certainly in my time, and I don't think has seen since my grandparents moved here in the 40s. So the challenges that We Run Brownsville as a grassroots organization faces, one is funding. We fundraise and write grants to cover the costs of participation so that no woman has inability to pay as a barrier, right? So we center our work in the care and commitment to care of Black and Brown women. And we don't want Black and Brown women to have to worry about how they're going to pay for anything. So we fundraise to pay for everything. And that includes access to coaches that support our training, whether it's in-person running or we've converted to a virtual platform because of COVID-19. We pay for recently because of the pandemic, knowing that in addition to the impacts upon people's physical health, that mental health would be impacted. So we launched our We Run Well pilot, and to date, we've serviced over 80 people with counselors that we paid for that are Black women serving a predominantly Black community. So we firmly believe in cultural relevance and cultural competence in our work. So lack of funding, we're always, half of our day is spent looking for funding. Lack of political support and power. So we think that our work would be even more advanced if we had access to local electeds to help support our work in a meaningful way. And then another challenge that we face is when we are talking to funders, it's the constant reframing and decolonizing of language, right? So that our work is not grounded in supporting and upholding the tenets of white supremacy and capitalism, the things that most impact our physical and mental health. So we're constantly reframing language, goals, right? We don't talk about expectations and outcomes, like we talk about like our values and our intentions. And we certainly don't speak or think about our work from a deficit point of view. So beyond strength-based, it really is what affirms our work. What do we know? Like, how is our expertise and our collective expertise being leveraged in this conversation? So, and We Run Brownsville has been fortunate enough through our relationship with Central Brooklyn and Brisa Builders. So we'll also be owners of a space within the Brownsville Hub that will allow us to deepen the ways in which we provide care and opportunities for care for members of our community through a healing center that will function as a spa. So the first ever spa in Brownsville, and a place for us to hold and host some of our fitness classes. So like, we're really excited about that because that is like the heart of community development. When the community itself is activated and allowed, not allowed, when the community itself is activated and given what it needs in order to sustain itself in a way that is healthy and purposeful and valuable and meaningful and impactful and sustainable.
Thank you so much, Dion.
Thank you.
So we actually do not have time for questions. I don't know if you heard the Apollo sound, but I was given the notification that we are at time. But I do, so we thank you all for participating in today's panel. The panelists, I mean, you all are amazing. And so we are already working together and we'll continue to work together. And so I put my email address here for anyone listening who today who want to have further conversations, who want to learn and understand more about what we're talking about. But yes, we are affirming that we are redefining gentrification. We're going to hold true to Brownsville's motto, never ran, never will. And really, and more importantly, work really hard to make sure that we invest and support the people, as well as investing in supporting the building of the infrastructure in our communities. And so with that being said, thank you all so much. And panelists, again, thank you very much for your time. We greatly, greatly appreciate you.